Hey everyone, this is episode 113 of Art Cafe. For this episode, I invited Peter Han. Peter is LA-based entertainment concept designer and instructor at Art Center College of Design. Peter is also teaching art online independently. We spoke about current state of art education, how it's rapidly changing, and how coronavirus pandemic is accelerating that change. I had fun talking to Peter and getting to know him a little better. I hope you're gonna enjoy this one as well. Let's go. Peter is LA-based entertainment concept designer.
That's the way this industry is, though, man. It's like everybody kind of knows everybody by name, by work.
Yeah.
To some degree. There's always that, kind of Kevin Bacon connection, 9 degrees. But, and of course we hear names, all that kind of stuff, but definitely, and that was our first time meeting was at Lightbox at the Mixer.
Yeah.
And that was a welcome surprise because I just kind of walked in. I had no idea what that was about. Recently I walked in, I found out, oh, this is a Learn Square Mixer meetup. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I didn't know if I was going to find anyone I knew. And then, of course, we meet people up, and it was a good time.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was hoping like, oh, maybe 2 people are gonna show up. That would be great.
No, man,
It was
an
packed.
event like that one, kids were looking for something to go to everywhere, So,
Yeah.
and that was a beauty of that location, but also of Lightbox is that, a lot of stuff was within walking distance, and people would just like find people and group together and at a
Mhm.
bar or a restaurant and kind of hanging out. So I
Yeah.
think that was great for you guys to do that for sure. It really gave a lot of students or people just to have a chance to meet up for sure.
Yeah, it was like a last minute we threw
Yeah,
out.
that also makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, because so Bobby reached out like right before Lightbox started.
Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
a week before they were going live with the whole thing. It's like,
Right.
hey Mache, do you want to do like I think he asked me for portfolio reviews, or like if there's
Okay.
anything I would want to do, because I think there was like still some wiggle room for things to do. I mean, when I went there to see the show, it was like, how do you find the wiggle room in all this madness?
Sure, of course.
It was so well organized. But yeah, like we just figured out with Andrew that this is a good opportunity to, because a lot of people are gonna fly in.
Mhm.
There's gonna be a good gathering of artists, and
Right,
we're just banking on the fact that there's gonna be some Learn Squared fans as well.
For sure.
So we flew in last minute, Momo, and just like we're hanging out there.
What did you guys do for the show, though? Did you guys have a booth or a table?
No, we didn't do it. I mean, it
Yeah.
was just like last minute thing.
That's
So
what I thought. It was just
the only thing we figured out was I did my portfolio reviews,
Right.
and we figured out we're just gonna throw in a mixer, just so that there's something fun.
Mhm.
We'll see how it goes this year, because like this year, with all the craziness, I'm not even sure it's gonna happen.
I know they're talking the plans that it's still going through. Like honestly, even other shows in the middle of the year, even Comic-Con San Diego, they're still on board
Right.
doing it. I haven't heard any news about canceling.
I'll be honest with you, I don't see Comic-Con happening.
I don't think so either. I don't think it should happen. I want it to happen, but to be safe, I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about 100,000 plus people in one spot. That's going to be terrible if it's still going on.
I
But,
can see Lightbox.
Yeah.
I can see an argument for a Lightbox,
Yeah.
because it's still far enough.
yeah,
Like there's
Yeah.
just going to be so much development that you can still kind of bank on the idea of making
Sure.
it happen.
sure.
But Comic-Con is like what, June, right? Or
July.
is it July?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that's I mean,
I don't know.
it's one of the biggest shows.
Yeah.
There's like millions of people,
It's ridiculous.
hundreds of thousands of people. That's just
And
like a
they're spreading
recipe
out to
for a
the
disaster.
city, and you are talking about millions of people in one, spot of the city.
Yeah, it's like New York
It's densely packed. Yeah,
or more.
or
Yeah.
more, or more.
Yeah,
So,
more and more.
For me
'Cause
personally, I've kind of voided out the year. Like any kind of group events, I don't think they're going to happen at all. Like I'm pursuing, individual pursuits, projects, and stuff like that, and teaching.
Yeah.
But group shows or group events, internationally or locally, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't think so. Yeah.
You live in LA, right? In the LA
I'm in LA.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you used to be in San Diego, right?
I was in San
Is that
Diego for
correct?
about 7 years. So I moved
Right.
up back to LA back in 2016. So it's been a couple of years already now.
Yeah, I remember San Diego. Anywhere outside of Comic-Con,
Yeah.
time frame, super chill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Comic-Con drops in, madness.
Even downtown is like that. Like when Comic-Con is there, it's nonstop craziness. But when people are gone, even
Yeah.
downtown's super chill, you know. So
Yeah, very chill. Like
oh
I
yeah.
love San Diego for that. It's just you just go in there during like a normal non
Touristy, yeah,
Comic-Con time,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
even with holidays, it's still pretty
Oh, it's great.
mellow.
I
Yeah,
miss
it's
it.
pretty mellow.
It was one of my favorite places to live in. I really felt like home there, but it
Mm.
made sense to come back up here because I was traveling, you know, every weekend from San Diego to LA to teach, and that
Yeah.
amount of driving for 7 years straight was a bit
Oh,
much.
that's not good.
It was fine. I mean, it was my daily life, and I kind of accepted it that way. But people are like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" I was like driving back and forth like this. All right,
Yeah.
I'll move back up. But yeah.
You know, we're talking about Ash briefly. You know, he used to do that every day
Yeah.
when he was at Prologue.
Right.
I was like, what the hell?
I met
He
up
told
with
me that
Ash
story.
once. This is back when I was in San Diego because he was up in the Carlsbad area, right? I think
Yeah, Oceanside. Yeah,
Oceanside. That's
he
what it
moved
was.
out from there.
Yeah, this was years ago though. We met up one time just to come, just sketch and draw. I just reached out to him saying, "Hey, you want to get together and just sketch?" And we did that once. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool to just hang out and talk. That guy's amazing, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of my best friends.
Yeah,
We
cool.
talk all the time, and yeah. But he was telling me when he was telling me that story, taking a train every day,
Oh man,
5 days, like going downtown, and
that's
then
too
from
rough.
downtown, I
couldn't
think it
do
was
it.
going to Venice or
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. No, thank
Oh,
you.
not fun. So when you
No
said
thanks.
like travel, yeah, not fun, because that drive can be that drive can be good and can be horrible.
Oh, and that's the thing. It's like you can time it actually. And after doing it for 7 years, I know the time frames as to like when it's a good drive and when
Yeah,
you know you're gonna hit terrible stuff.
yeah.
But when it's good, it's very good.
I think now, like even 4 years ago, it was bad traffic wise. I think now it would be even worse, like way worse.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know.
I
People
mean
feel better than
now
them
it's like
before.
no traffic.
Oh no, of course. I keep thinking about doing this too. Like even right now, I want to take more just road trips. Like I don't want to go to like big group places, but going to
Yeah.
parks or national forests and stuff like this, just to go out and hike would be a lot of fun.
Are national parks still open?
They are. They should be. Because
Okay, that's a good way to
yeah,
take a break and go to like maybe not Yosemite, because Yosemite is probably one of the places that
possibly.
yeah,
Well,
it's
I had
always been packed.
Yeah, I had plans to go to Yellowstone with Manu. Manu was on with you last time.
Yeah.
And, he's part of the Expedition Arts crew, which I'm a part of them with as well too. So
Yep.
we're supposed to go to Yellowstone in May, but I don't know. They really want to go for it, but we'll see what happens. Because I bought plane tickets to fly out from Burbank to go to Montana, but I think I wouldn't mind just driving there. So
Yeah, just put
we'll
a
see.
hazmat suit. You're gonna have
Yeah,
a
there you
first
go.
class for yourself. No one's
Exactly.
flying right now.
Yeah, no
It's
one
all
is
good.
flying. Literally, no one's out there.
Yeah.
In the airports, so
Literally emptiness.
empty. So who knows?
Yeah, you just have to be careful, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the likelihood of something bad happening is so low, but yeah, why risking
Still.
it?
Exactly, but it's more in the sense of risking others. It's like everyone
Yeah.
like saying, "Oh, I'll be okay," but then
Yeah.
you can still be carrying it, and other people might get affected. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you would go on a flight with
Yeah.
maybe 2 more people, but you all like everyone wearing mask and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
not. I mean, it's a circulated air, so you have to be like really careful.
Exactly.
Driving there, I guess it's just a long drive.
It's a long drive. It's like 10 hours or more.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't mind a long drive.
But that's one of the things that I feel like should be encouraged. Like going to parks, not going to places that are like crowded.
Oh, like the whole beach thing? Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, dude, I was driving last week up the PCH,
Mm-hmm.
because like I just cannot be at home all the time. I have to take
Right.
like a drive or something.
Yeah.
I don't go to parks because everywhere you go here, it's like there's just a ton of people.
Exactly.
Even though like streets are pretty I mean it's pretty good. It's not as bad as normally, but for an average person, if you would just like teleported through the air and appeared in a park, it's like, why is everyone out?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not that everyone's out. It's just like 1% of the normal crowd.
Mhm, exactly.
But it's still a lot.
It's a lot still. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. We
It is.
live in
It's
interesting
really
times.
unpredictable right now what's going to happen too, because that's that's the part that is really unsettling, is that no one really knows at whatever levels of like the upper, tiers of politics down to like the regular people. No one knows really what's going on. All they can do is
Yeah.
just go by moment to moment. And it's like, okay, we're gonna extend the quarantine a little bit longer here, and then we're gonna go a little bit longer there. So I think it's been like
Yeah.
reset to like May or something like this. But all they
Mid-May,
can
I
really do is
think,
just
as of
sit
today.
just sit and wait and see what happens, I guess. So
I think we'll be fine.
oh, yeah, I have no doubt.
I always try to think positively about those things, and
Yeah.
the predictions that were there versus the reality, but the reality comes from the reaction.
Yeah.
Meaning like there was the policies in place and how people reacted to it as well, and actually started sheltering in place and retaking it seriously, because most people did.
Yeah.
That really affected the outcome.
Right.
Because for instance, California, like the prediction where there's just gonna be like 5-6 times more people sick, and now the curve was supposed to go all the way through May,
but it definitely dropped.
But it's like, well, now we're supposed to peak in like few days.
I thought it was today, actually. I heard that too.
Or
like
or
something like that.
One of those, right? So but it's like today. Absolutely. But that's like a giant difference between cases growing constantly and going like 5-6 times more all the way through May, right?
Yeah.
So it just shows you like how responsible people are about this thing, and that's just really encouraging.
Yeah, especially around this area in LA, people have been pretty good about that. I think I've read a lot of articles about people being more not prepared, but used to these kinds of situations where like the wildfires would happen, earthquakes would be there. So people in LA are kind of like used to, I guess, natural disasters, this kind of stuff happening. Not devastating in terms of like life-ending kind of things, but something is always going on around here. So
yeah. And it's very spread out area. I mean, the traffic kills you. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not like people are on top of one another like in New York. I guess New York has it bad because like just the congestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about the elevators and crowded places, trains, public transport, because everyone's just doing public transport in LA.
If you're in LA
just to drive
so long, like you get out of touch of context of what that's like being in a city that dense. And if you travel, you really get a sense of it. Like I was in Paris last year, and that was in July, and it was hot as hell and humid. And you're taking the metro systems in Paris, and it's so packed and it's so hot. And it's like people living like this every single day, and you could tell they're upset. They don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone likes it.
They don't like the tourists. That's why they're always so like kind of
grumpy.
I can see why. It's like, oh my god, this is so uncomfortable.
Oh, those fucking tourists. My French accent. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah. Let me, I mean, I know your work for a while already. I've been following you for quite a few years, seeing what you do. I always associated your work with teaching because you've been doing that a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
I would be curious because, a lot of artists that I talk with that I know from like, oh, this guy, like usually you see someone's work, it's like, oh, this guy,
Yeah.
But you never like, unless you're like psychopath, I guess, you delve into personal lives, or someone really well just by meeting them, by the virtue of meeting them.
Right.
I'm always curious, like where the drive for art and generally speaking, the journey from where you were to where you are, where is that all coming from? So maybe, I mean, this could be also a good introduction to you for those who don't know who you are.
Of course,
maybe just give a little insight on where you come from in terms of like what got you to be an artist, and maybe there are some childhood stories or like pivotal moments, anything like that.
And do stop me at any point if I'm going too long too.
Oh no, dude.
Change directions in terms of conversation. But, I think everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own past in terms of where they came from and all that stuff. And everyone has unique lives.
Yeah. This is not an interview, by the way. Like we're almost talking like we're just meeting for a coffee,
sharing in terms of like, for me, it's like, it all started from, honestly, the very beginning of just youth, being like a 4 or 5 year old, and
right.
I tell people this all the time when I'm teaching in classes, but literally my very first memory of being a person is of drawing, is of creating something, is of, sketching or coloring or something. And I'm sure a lot of people have this kind of memory also, but literally for me, it was my grandfather. I was in his lap and he was drawing birds on a piece of paper. That's the first memory I actually had. And ever since then, I haven't been able to get drawing out of my head, just creating and creating. And I
Right.
think that what, I guess, not really separates me, but what I understand, what I'm fortunate about is that no one ever told me to stop. No one ever said no. And so I
Mm.
was always encouraged to keep doing what I was doing, from like family to education to work, and the all my siblings and the people that I knew. At every turn that I had in life, there was always someone saying, "That's awesome, man. Keep going. You know, what you're doing there is what you should be doing." So I was set up not to fail in a lot of ways.
Right.
Even though, of course, there are a lot of failures as you attempt to do things within techniques or education or meeting people, and jobs. But at the same time, in terms of just the growth of wanting to be an artist and in the pursuit of that goal that you are so passionate about, it was the people around me at the end of the day. It was that community of family to them friends is what really helped encourage that drive to go further, because
Right.
I had that friendly competition. I had that great, the I guess the people that we looked up to as artists. Guys like Craig Mullins being one of them back at Art Center, right? We all looked at him. It's like, oh my god, the god of Photoshop and that kind of stuff. And I had my own heroes as well too. And so yeah, that's a huge factor, I would say, is really the people. And then, not to say that I'm just only fortunate, but I recognize that, and I recognize that linking to people were quite important. But definitely in my youth, it was a bit harder to I guess be open about it and accept people, because from
Hmm.
my past and how I grew up, I was a very introverted person. So even doing stuff like this, if it was like 20 years ago, I was, in my early 20s and late teens, it would have been very hard to just talk to people, because I didn't
Right.
know how to like express myself. I didn't know exactly how to open up, because I always put a guard of it. I always put a wall in front of me, because I'm sure as introverts and also many artists kind of know how that feels, about how they are projecting themselves. They feel it's a bit insecure, their work, themselves, how they speak, how they look, all those things. So I very
Yeah.
much fall in that same kind of cliche category. But thankfully, due to the people that I met, I've been able to, navigate around that and become very comfortable and confident within my own skin, but also definitely in the work that I do, and the pursuits I wanted to go for.
Hmm.
So I really, really do commend it to, not just because I worked hard and not just because I put all my life into it, but literally was people around me that really encouraged that energy.
The
So,
nurturing part of it.
oh, a huge part of it. And that's the thing I
Yeah.
recognize too, is that not every kid and person gets that. And they could have all the potential in the world, but they just may not get that environment with the people there to say, keep going.
Yeah. You build the
Uh,
callus. You become a
exactly.
grumpy person like
Oh yeah,
myself, like
yeah,
this wrinkled potato.
exactly. So,
Yeah, my mom used to tell me like, "You're never gonna be an artist because
right.
I don't want you to waste your life."
And that's the
Which
thing,
I,
I'm amazed I didn't have that with my family.
yeah,
They didn't
which
do
is
that.
something I get, honestly, But that's, yeah, that's a whole story.
Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah,
So I don't
but
know. I
that's
mean,
awesome. That's
it was
awesome. Like the fact that you had a circle of people that support you. That's something to be that's really awesome.
yeah.
Because
No, but that's
sometimes,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, this is why I teach so much now, though. It's because of what I got from that intern and circle. I'm kind of in that
Hmm.
position now to give back. But no, go ahead. What were you about to?
No, it's exactly what I was about to say. Like just the fact that you got almost nurtured to be encouraged in um in becoming an artist. I remember when I came to US for the first time, because moving from Europe to US was a
Yeah,
giant culture shock. Even though it's first world countries, from first world countries, and even arguably, because I moved from Germany, some of like
yeah,
more developed areas than when I came here. Was like, what? This is like some 80s shit. um, but the culture part was really really shocking to me,
yeah.
and at first I felt everything is kind of a little bit too fake for me.
I see.
That sort of like, how you doing? I'm great. How about you? How about you? Yeah, we're great. Like, yeah, go for it. Oh yeah, cheer and all that stuff.
How old were you when you
Oh,
came
I,
over?
I was 10 years ago
Oh,
when
okay.
I moved here.
All right.
So I was already working in the industry
Yeah,
for a
yeah, yeah.
while, and
Exactly.
and had like my fair share of like, hey, like your work sucks, or
Yeah,
don't do that. That's stupid. That's against
yeah,
the
yeah,
grain.
yeah.
But when I came here, that was a culture shock. But I quickly realized that that's one of the things that actually encourage you to take that extra effort and do that extra step. Because like most of my life, I would have my family was not supporting the idea of me being an artist. They want,
Sure.
you know, my mom wanted me be an engineer,
Yeah, yeah.
which made sense because like she just didn't
Well, that's what she
understand.
knows.
Yeah,
So,
she just didn't know. But the moment she realized that, hey, you know, you can actually take care of yourself and family doing that, that's awesome. You
sure.
know, so it's like turn around immediately.
Yeah.
Um, but even working in the industry in Europe, and I don't know how it is right now, but back then, you know, in early 2000s, mid 2000 and late 2000, you know, there would be some people that would be really encouraging and like fun to hang out with, and they would always
Right.
like look for something new to learn. But most you'll be like this grumpy, like complaining about work and you know, why you're doing this, why you're doing that. You know, I think it's changing because of the internet. Like back then, it was very difficult. There was no social media,
Right.
technically speaking.
Right.
So that's changing. We're becoming more global on that. But when I came here, that was like the first thing I've noticed. And honestly, the time I spent at Naughty Dog, for instance, when I
Mhm.
was working with people that are exactly like that, like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, like go for it. This is awesome. You know,
Right.
this is great. And working with very driven people, that
Mhm.
kind of opens you up. Like, yeah, why not? Like, hell
Do you
yeah,
think that's
why
a
not?
cultural thing, or do you think that's more of a working method ethic type of thing also, or
I think it's a mix of both,
mix of both? Yeah.
honestly. Yeah, a little bit of culture, a little bit of work
Right.
ethics, a little bit of political
Traditions and stuff like that.
systems, like all of that. Because, you know, I think Americans, and it's I don't know much about other countries, but Americans always stand out for the idea that you can you know go from zero to hero.
Yeah.
It's like almost this, you know, like you can be on the absolute bottom,
Right.
and if you work I'm not saying that's true,
No,
but
but
the
that
belief,
mentality that is
the
there.
mentality, exactly.
Yeah.
Most people in this country think that if you work real hard, you'll eventually get to achieve something.
Right. Right.
And for
Right.
the most of the history, from what from the little that I know about American history, you know, that's used to be somewhat true,
Hmm.
you know, to a certain degree. I'm not saying
Sure.
for everyone, but definitely more true to that here in America versus like anywhere in Europe.
Oh
At
yeah,
least
I would agree with that.
to my subjective experience, you
But
know.
that's also like in Asia as well too, and that's
Right.
the unique things in my experience in that sense of I could have had a very similar experience of what you're talking about, where my parents would have forced me into a different direction, and because they're immigrants also coming from Korea,
Right.
and they're coming from the same kind of mindset where you should be yes working hard, but you should also be doing this because this makes uh, sense in terms of working for making money, of
Yeah.
an actual job, a business, or whatever the case is, and that's the
The
typical cliche that everyone hears about the Asian family
the
kind of thing.
yeah, the infamous tiger
Oh
moms.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's the one thing I wonder about is like I'm sure my parents thought about that and just like worried about, oh, is art gonna be an actual job? Could you survive doing this kind of thing? But they
Hmm.
never voiced that, never like showed any kind of concern. And that's
Hmm.
where it always like made me wonder, why do they think that way, even though they're directly immigrating from Korea? And that's the funny thing too, is that I didn't get that, but I can probably feel that my brothers and sisters did. My brother and sister. So my
Right. Maybe
siblings
you were
probably
not the
actually got it
favorite
from
one.
them, yeah, being forced and directed, like you should do this,
Yeah.
and if you want to do that, no, go for this. But for some reason, they actually didn't, give that kind of energy to me. I think maybe, well, for one, I am the oldest of the family.
Hmm.
I'm the oldest of four, so it's me, my two brothers and sister. So in Asian families, usually the oldest one kind of gets the I guess the first take on things, whether we all agree with it or not. It was kind of like the setup of the family, and so I think because I was pursuing that and being the first one as the oldest, they kind of let me do that thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I hear a lot of contrast to that too, where a lot of the older ones in the family, as a kid, has to set the example and has to then go out and like find the proper work and do
Right.
kind of traditional methods of things. But that's, like I said, it kind of perplexes me that my family, it didn't really happen like that for me. I've always kind of felt a little bit like a black sheep to a degree because I was really the only one pursuing art. I think my family, my father's side, had potential. They showed signs of it. They
Hmm.
never really had the opportunities. Even my brothers actually had some creative sense as well too, but a lot of them, kind of all went their different directions. So I was the only one within the entirety of my family, from cousins and stuff like this, to show any sort of creative interest to the degree that I was doing. So I think because there was a bit of a uniqueness to it, or maybe because my family have always wanted to do stuff like this too. Maybe they
Right.
kind of go pursue that. But I do appreciate it. And so very much, they mentioned it every now and again. It's like, we're glad things worked out. That kind of stuff. I can see that there might have been some worry back then. But still, it did work out well.
Yeah, it's usually well meant, like parents
That's
make
true. Yeah,
their own
exactly.
choices because they feel that, they have enough experience in the world to know what's better for you. And oftentimes it's true,
Yeah.
like when you talk with parents and sometimes, oh, you're old, like, what are you talking about? This is a new world. People are young. They have
Yeah.
better ideas. Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Yeah.
How old are you? Like, you're mid 30s ish,
I'll
right?
be 39 this year.
All right. Okay. You were a little older, a little
Well,
bit, not too much, but a little bit older than
I
me.
look way younger, but yeah, getting a little bit older.
But when you were a kid, like when you were in your early 20s, like when I was in my early 20s, I was a moron. I'm pretty sure if you felt that way too. Like you felt that
Many
the
ways,
best.
yes.
Yeah.
Especially with like the social aspect of it, like connecting to people and like trying to build relationships and stuff. I was super awkward. I
Right.
had no idea how to talk to people. But
Yeah.
in the weird thing in terms of like art is where I kind of like fell back towards, and I was always in that kind of world, and
Mhm.
that I was super focused on, and you couldn't get me away from it. But everything else within life, yeah, I was a
Yeah.
even like regular school, I wasn't that great at it.
My
Educator.
mom would tell me something and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know what's going on. You're old. And then you grow up, you're getting older. It's like, oh, I totally understand what they're talking about. They have way
Yeah,
more
no,
experience than we do.
exactly. Of course, for sure.
Makes sense. So yeah, you were encouraged to do that.
I
What was the
was.
path you went through? Because I guess you guys moved to US, and did you go to
Yes.
college, or what
So,
was your?
as my parents immigrated over here, this is in the late 1970s. I was born in 81. My father joined the US military. So I was born on an army base in Colorado.
Okay.
Growing up, up until about high school, is where my parents started to kind of like give me the opportunities to join schools that were actually more art centric. So
Mm-hmm.
up until about junior high, middle schools and stuff like that, it was regular public education. My high school ended up being a magnet art school. So it was still public, but it was more centered in the arts.
Gotcha.
It was still
Okay.
small. It was a very tiny school. So, going there from what age of 14, graduating high school at 18. I had met a lot of friends there going into art and stuff like this. That's where I met a good friend of mine named Izzy Madrano. I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah, I know Easy.
Izzy. So we met at high school together. We grew up together like that.
Oh
I've
damn,
known him for a long time. Known him since I
he's
was 14.
such an interesting person.
He's a very cool. I mean, again,
Yeah.
I think he offers a lot of cool insights especially in terms of education. He's a really cool dude. But after high school, I went to the Art Institute. This is back in 1999 when the Art Institute was just coming out. And this is
Mm-hmm.
when AI was seen as a relatively okay school. Now,
Right.
obviously, they're kind of falling apart. But back then, they had just started. And I got a 2-year program in Associates in Graphic Design. But it was kind of like a very weird, open ended kind of school where it's like, hey, we can do illustration work and like packaging design and graphic stuff. And
Right.
just whatever, just experience art. But it was good for me because I had to go through that experience of just college a little bit, grow up, and then that's when I went to Art Center. And so Art Center, was in 2001 to finish in like 2004, something like this. And that's where I built a lot of my formative career choices and paths and foundations, a lot of stuff, and met very very notable mentors that really helped me along. And this is from like again high school to art institute, then art center. Each and every like moment of education, I had like one person I really attached myself to, and that's again another part of what I was talking about earlier about really recognizing people, because there were people always there that I didn't ask for help, but they just gave it to me.
Right.
Because they saw something, but I never, requested it. But man, these are people that I'm still connected to today. And the last mentor I had at Art Center was probably the most influential and the one that I really wanted to not really mimic, but carry the legacy from what he established, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I started teaching so much at Art Center.
Who
Uh,
was that, if you don't mind sharing?
but that was Norm Sherman, and he taught at
Okay.
Art Center for a number of years. He actually taught in product design, industrial design, and he was a foundation sketching teacher at Art Center under illustration and under product design. And I met him, it
Right.
was in 2002 for the first time. A student, a friend of mine was like saying, "You got to take this class. Like this is like right up your alley." I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." I didn't even know about the class, and that's what I'm teaching now. So I took
Right.
it easy, and I was like, "Okay, that's it. I got to stick with this." And I was with this guy for like a year straight at Art Center, term after term, just coming back to the same class.
Mm.
And then he brought me in as a TA, saying, "Hey, come work with me." And then we just got stronger relationship. Start to get to know more of each other. Got to know his family, his kids, all that stuff. And then from there we just remained friends for a long time. This is up until
That's
about
awesome.
2010. It was when he passed away tragically. And so then that's when Art Center came to me saying, "Hey, would you continue what he was doing?" So right when he passed, the term afterwards, I started teaching at Art Center. And there were big shoes to fill. I was 28 when I first started teaching, so it's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, because I mean, at that point, also in my mid 20s, I was relatively confident. I was only just starting to build things like shows at Comic Con and books I was producing, and I only just started teaching it with Kevin Chen at CDA. So when Art Center came through, I was like, okay, it's like I have to do this path that has been presented to me because there's no choice. Art Center presented this, like I have to do it, no matter how I felt about it. So I started up, and so I started teaching. It's been consistently every single term, been back there for 10 years straight. And so he left a huge impression on me in terms of how I teach, how I present myself, how I interact with people. And so he taught me a lot more than just about drawing and design, but it's about being just a person. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge change in my personality after that point.
Yeah, I can tell there's like different breeds of teaching.
Yeah.
Like people go about teaching in a very different way, and the way you were presenting yourself, because I haven't taken any of your classes yet,
Right.
but the way you've always been presenting yourself was very sharp, like from the get-go. It's just like very structured, fucking all the way to the nitty-gritty detail.
Yeah.
And not many people pay that much attention to detail, when the teaching comes along,
Sure.
Yeah, are you still teaching at the Art Center?
Yeah, so we're currently in term right now also. We're all online because of this whole quarantine thing.
Oh, yeah,
so
of course.
we're all online, and Art Center is trying to figure out how to do all the system because this is their first time going online too.
Right.
Which, I give credit to, because in the short amount of time they had, they were able to solve it out. Teaching online and setting up a platform is not easy.
Yeah.
Thankfully now it's easier because of all the different third-party softwares. But like 10 years ago when like CGMA was starting and I was starting with them, we're trying to figure out how to actually do this stuff online.
Yeah.
But definitely, the teaching styling is a huge part of, like, I borrow a lot of it from Norm because he was also very upfront. But I'm also very different personality-wise, where I am actually very open, and obviously people consider me being a very nice guy. So in the beginning of school, when I started teaching, I was very much like that, where I would push, but I wasn't like hammering down on people.
Right.
But last couple of years, I've become a lot more strict, and I think it's because I've just become so much more familiar with my teaching style and also the method.
Mm-hmm.
But then what's happened is that the student body has changed. Where like 10 years ago, a lot of the students were coming in at mid 20s, early 20s, but now these kids are like 18, 17, and a couple of years difference makes a huge personality change. So you need a little bit more structure and a little bit more discipline in terms of, like, you got to do this. It's like if you don't do it, you get out. So
yeah, how do you feel about students in general? I mean, I know what teaching does to you is like you quickly realize. I mean, you can tell from first few lessons who's gonna make it and who's not.
Yeah. I would say in that sense, I've been able to read people, much easier in the last couple of years, mainly because at first, you would talk to them, you could easily figure out like who is going to not only just make it, but not only just make it within art, but then also be able to take control and reins in their own path, whether they are or not, whether they'll actually be able to stand up for themselves and actually just make decisions and choices, and not be dependent on things too. But no, I can read people pretty quickly these days because of that fact. But no, it's true. And I tell those people at Art Center and in this school on the first day, I tell them 80% of you are not going to make it. You're not going to get to where you want to go. And so what I lead up to, the idea is you may not get exactly what you want when you finish, but then how do you adapt? How do you how do you go around it and go to the side door or the back door? And how do you, like I said, find the stepping stones to get to eventually where you want to go? But there's this huge expectation that they got to be able to perform, right when they finish school, they got to automatically get that one job they really want to go for. And if they don't get it, they feel all, depressed about it and stuff like this. But that's the way it was for me. And when I graduated, I wanted to be somewhere and I didn't get it. I failed at that part.
Right.
And it took me 6 months after graduation to actually find a job. And I had to find some way to adapt. But I think some of the students coming out being much younger, would they have a little bit of a harder time? I personally would not want to be a student today due to the fact
Yeah.
that of those many things.
It has some good and bad with it, you know,
does.
like right now it's probably the easiest time to learn anything, literally anything.
Yeah.
But it also means,
Either.
yeah, but it also means like there's, I guess it's the abundance of choice in the first place.
Yeah.
That's the problem, because like all of a sudden, you need to learn a skill of being assertive, like really quickly. Otherwise, you're just gonna struggle with where to start, or even just to start, because there's just too much choices.
Right.
And then the always doubting the fact that, okay, am I making a right choice with this class?
Tons of that. Yeah. So I think that's the current issue right now, is that because. So here's my view on education currently too, in terms of what's going on. And I've been telling people this, just my own personal opinion, but the way I'm seeing it, like when we were in school at Art Center, you know, we kind of followed the traditional means of like, okay, we go to college, we go 4 years, 5 years, we get our degree, and we start looking for work. We'll start working in the time that we need to. I would say about 10 years ago when I started teaching, things started to shift a little bit, because now more online stuff was coming to play. CGMA started. And these other schools were now starting to emerge, CDA, Brainstorm, whatever the case is. So some local students had a lot more opportunity. In the last 5 years, you know, there's been a lot more online content. So now individual, like people are really pushing for it, going online, whether, you know, guys like me and Rat Seacrest and Aaron Blaze, these guys are all playing with their own platforms. But recently in the last year or two, what's happening is that students are not really even looking for schools and platforms anymore. What they're doing is they're going directly to the source. They're going directly to the artist and saying, hey, can you mentor me? You know, can I take a class with you? And so they're not really looking for systems even anymore. I'm not going to say that these systems and schools aren't going to disappear. They'll always be there. There's always going to be a place for that kind of stuff of learning. But I think a lot of younger people are also looking for direct help as one-on-one to get that kind of information. And that's, again, like I said, a problem in terms of what's going on right now due to the age, due to the insecurity, and also not having the maturity to actually make a choice, because students these days are looking for answers. They're looking for something to be told what to do. They're having a hard time actually discovering things. They're saying, I don't know what to do here, tell me what to do with this, and then they'll try it. And it takes us all the way up to the point of graduation a lot of times too. So
let me watch that tutorial, and based on that I want to be already working on Craig Mullen's level.
So that is a problem.
Yeah, that definitely is. It's almost like I want tips. I want an exact blueprint. I don't want to think. It just has to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're generalizing. It's not everyone that's doing that, but
and I'm not going to say that those people can't find work either, and many of those people can. But it can be a problem, I think, in terms of long term, because some people that stay within the industry only want to stay for so long, and eventually they might want to venture off into their own thing, or develop their own brand, or develop their own kind of system. But for them, it would be really hard to, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think the ability to learn is one of those things that is becoming over time way more valuable than learning actual topic.
That's a good way to put it, because I actually was teaching my last class, and one of the students kind of mentioned that to me, that what he got most out of my last class was how to learn, not about what he was learning, but how to learn it. You know, so I thought that was a really good insight. Like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the most important abilities for students to kind of like figure out the way to actually learn efficiently and be able to be assertive and filter through the sources that you're looking at, and being able to like, okay, if there's too many things to do, too many choices to have, how do I organize myself to make the right choices, or just to make a choice at all?
Extremely important, I think, in terms of laying down your foundations, because it is so hard to consume all that stuff that is out there. And if you're unable to not just organize, but like you're just saying, make the decisions and move forward and make your opinions about it, at least even absorb it and apply it, you just go in circles, constant circles. So that's also a lot of the questions and requests I get from students too, is like, how do I go about, going through all of this information? Because it seems so overwhelming, and it can be. But I mean, of course, you can go to a system of a school like a university and do it for you. But if you're on your own, and there are many options, and you don't have to go to these kind of schools anymore. I don't tout, even though I've been teaching at Art Center for 10 years, I don't say that place is the best place to go to, nor do I always recommend it.
We all know what's the best place to go to is Learn Square.
And you can pitch Learn Square. That's fine. I've been playing with the idea of maybe working with you guys too. So
Yeah, that would be cool. You know that,
Of
baby.
course. I think a lot of it is just maintaining good connections, man. Building a good network community
Yeah.
with people.
We know I mean, we all, that's what me and Momo, when we reach out to people, it's like, we always like, first we want to have the best, obviously, right?
Sure.
But then we reach out, it's like, oh, those guys are as busy as we are, So it's a
Yeah.
matter of timing, I guess.
But
Yeah,
it's time and education for sure.
yeah,
Especially art education.
it's perfect what you said, and it's there's this famous quote from Henry Ford, who said, like, the customers can have their car painted any color they want, as
Yeah.
long as it's black.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes sense. Like, as soon as that's something I've also been learning from completely different source, which is marketing. Like,
Yeah.
the moment you introduce too many choices,
Right.
or overcomplicate the amount of choices or customization that your customer is going to have, that's the moment when you lose them.
I think there's also a delicate balance of making sure you listen to feedback of what the audience and customer want,
Right,
but also
of course.
breaking your back and bending backwards for them, which you don't want to do also.
Yeah. There is this game that everyone knows, which is World of Warcraft. And if you follow his history of that game,
Right.
the devs, the developers of that game would fall a victim of basically a customer's mob.
Oh yeah.
We want this, otherwise we quit.
Oh yeah. That's what's happening with Hollywood recently with all the movie changes, right?
Exactly.
Trailer, people are complaining and they literally will go back and change it. That's never happened ever.
Yeah.
Only recently.
Imagine Ridley Scott going back to Alien, or we need more of that or not this,
Oh man.
Yeah, that would be
interesting time
crazy.
because now people literally have power, in their voice and what they can say, and they can change things.
Right.
But is that actually a good thing in terms of what we do as creating a product and designing something to, obviously within our own voice and the artistry and the professionalism that comes into it?
Yeah.
Do we stick with that, or do we now have to bend to, what everyone else is telling us to do? So it's a weird time for that.
It's a delicate balance, but I think at the end of the day, what matters the most is your personal integrity.
For sure.
Like, the moment because here's what I think about this whole thing. I feel like it's one thing to listen to critical feedback.
Yeah.
And like that's again an ability by itself that you
Sure.
actually filter all the noise that come towards you,
Right.
and find the stuff that is actual critical feedback versus just someone complaining. Because
Exactly.
there's a ton of people all they do is complain.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being the ability to filter that out
Mhm.
and listen to feedback,
Yeah.
but not fall a victim of listening to everything, because then, like, you start changing your behavior towards being liked
That's exactly
versus
that's right.
versus towards having your integrity as an artist or a person.
Mhm.
And
I think that's something that younger people have to be more mindful of, because it can happen to at that level of a product with millions of dollars in play. But then if you bring it back down even to the individual who is a student or an artist who's developing their selves and putting themselves online, that same kind of feedback or complaints can come their way, and how you then negotiate that information and how you balance that properly, where it doesn't affect, like you said, your behavior, but you're able to stick to your guns a little bit and stick to your instincts and sticking with what you want to go for. But obviously being mindful about how you filter that information too, where yes, you obviously want to improve, but you definitely don't want that to influence you in ways that's going to affect your, like you said, integrity. So
yeah, it's
tough
a
right now,
very
but,
it's a very difficult dance to have, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
In terms, has it affected me to some degree? Because I mean, honestly, when I go online on social media, do I hear a lot of complaints? And thankfully, I really don't. I get a lot of support, as I've always said. And I think that does continue to encourage to stick to what I feel like I'm doing is working. It's working, so I
Right.
keep going with it. But I'm sure people who have much larger followings or are producing different kind of products might get complaints and stuff like that. So, how would I deal with something like this? I think, would I ignore it? I think to some degree. I think a good thing to do online.
Yeah,
is
you
just-
have to.
just don't pay attention to it.
I get I get overwhelmingly from the amount of people that do comment and talk and send private messages. Overwhelmingly awesome people, but at the moment, I think the reality is, like, once you reach certain threshold of people,
Sure.
1 in 100 of, I think it's worldwide, 1 in 100, 1 person in 100 is a psychopath or a sociopath, right?
And
Statistically,
voice online.
1%.
Yeah.
So like if you have 100,000 people following you, you can assume that even if it's a half, like 0.1%, right?
Yeah.
What's the 0.1% of 100,000? That's like 100 people.
Yeah.
That follow you are like complete psychos.
Yeah, and they'll comment
in a way.
I don't want to comment.
And so like you have to take that to consideration. And also I've noticed that a lot of the people that complain a lot tend to be more vocal than people that don't like complaining.
Sure.
And also I think there was this study that they made that and it was about Twitter specifically, like how the amount of words you can say on Twitter,
right,
how it's negatively affecting emotions, because most people who complain do it in the very short sentences versus people who are happy, they usually just place 1 or 2 words, or they write a full review saying how awesome it is and just like explain their story behind it.
Yeah.
Which Twitter almost doesn't allow you to do. So maybe that's why it's a dumpster fire.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel the same way about YouTube. It's like it's really hard to read some of the comments on there sometimes. It's just, crazy.
YouTube comments, man.
YouTube. I don't think I can ever remember putting a comment on anybody's video. So
why? Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah. I get it. Like I ask for comments all the time.
Somebody by saying like, "Hey, great job." I can kind of see that. I've never done it for someone else's work, even like friends' work. I don't really do that. I would literally just tell them up front in person instead. I wouldn't necessarily comment on their videos and stuff. Like even on Facebook, if I have like family and stuff posting things, I might like it, but I never comment on things. So I don't know where that maybe comes from. It might be like the digital age when they're younger, you're on your phone all the time. You're like texting stuff. Maybe that's a part of it. But
you're just like brain farts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just kind of comes out of your fingertips and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, I like asking people to comment and reading those. Sure. Like not all the time, but
right.
I got some, like, even with this podcast, I've got some like really. At glance, it looks like someone's complaining about something. Right. But when you read through it, it's like, okay, I mean, this makes sense, and like that's one of the.
That's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember. And this is a difficult thing to do, but interrupting is huge. Like when I listen to a podcast these days, when someone interrupts the host, the host interrupts the guests all the time, I'm like, I'm out. I cannot listen to this, you know? Yeah. But I used to do it a lot. Like I've listened to my early episode, I was just like, oh my God, I'm a moron.
In the moment, you're excited though. Like you want to talk and talk and talk.
True.
So I can understand how that feels, but it's true though. I mean, I would watch podcasts and you can tell the ones that end up they overtake the conversation, and it's hard to like be aware when there has to have that balance back and forth a little bit. I've had that happen a couple of times with podcasts as well, where people are asking for like, hey, let him talk more kind of thing. There'd be that kind of comments and kind of stuff. So I see that.
Yeah, it's I mean, I feel like I'm a white belt of podcasting, honestly, even though I've learned a ton doing it. I mean, past 100 and something episodes.
Sure.
It's a learning experience, and definitely, I mean, the most difficult part I find in the conversation, having conversation online, because that's what we're doing here, is not being face to face with someone, because the dynamic is completely different.
It is different. Yeah, I was mentioning this with the class today, where I was talking about if I was teaching a class with you guys physically in a classroom, I would actually be a very different individual, because I can read your body language and your face. Like if I said something, I will be able to understand if you got it or not. But if I'm talking to you online and you guys have no response to it because you're not talking to me live, I don't even hear your words or your voice, then I can only assume what's going on. And maybe you can tell me, but I still can't read that deep into it. So it's tougher when you're teaching online because you're limited in information because of interaction. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's always like a very tiny delay, but that amount of tiny delay affects like when I talk or you talk. I'm not sure when you finish talking, all of those things.
It's like the dance when you step in and step out and you're trying to like figure out your timing. It's delicate. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to have a dead air too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
and it gets super uncomfortable. It's like,
yeah, because it gets like really weird. Like someone says something and it's dead air. Did you finish?
But you feel it instantly. It doesn't take
Yeah.
a microsecond. It's like, oh man, right there. It just feels off.
Right. Yeah. Or even just like when you say something, normally when you say something and I look at you and I just have to nod, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. But when you do it through Skype and I'm nodding all the time, it's like, I just have to say something, like even just like, yeah, okay, yeah, right. Just to acknowledge that I'm still listening, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I was doing that last night with my friends. We were on Google Hangouts because we've been, inside all day, and we actually do weekly meetups. We just sketch. We just hang out like a cafe or a bar, and we just grab a coffee or a beer and drink and just draw. And it was usually me, Aaron Lamonic, and we Cameron Davis, Marco, and a couple other crew, and we just sit and just sketch. But this last night we actually did it online on Google Hangouts. We're like, man, we're bored. We just got to get together and draw something. And so we just hanging out for a little bit. It was great. And just sat down and just had a conversation. And I'm sure this has become a lot more of a basic activity these days for most people. Just getting online, Google Hangouts, playing games while you're doing it too. It was cool to do that for the first time, actually.
Yeah, Aaron's a good friend. I mean, I've worked with him at Naughty Dog. I actually met Cameron a month ago, I think.
Really? Oh, just recently? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked with him before, but like in person, I have never met him before. Yeah, he's a fascinating dude too.
He's got a pretty crazy story, I'm sure.
Yeah, we went to see a concert together.
Oh, really? That's the way you
shortly
met him?
Before. It was still in this weird spot where no one knew what to do, and like the amount of cases in LA was like really low.
Oh yeah.
And they weren't even considering a shutdown whatsoever. And literally like a few days after we came back from the concert, it's like, oh, they think they're gonna start shutting things down.
Yeah.
And like that tour, it was Cult of Luna that we went to see.
Yeah.
That tour was canceled. Like I think it was one more show that they've done. It was they were supposed to do like 10 more shows or something, and they canceled it all. Yeah, interesting. Sweden is not doing any of that. Like they're just open.
Also, people are just out there just walking around still.
Yeah.
I heard there's no quarantine, so I'm not sure how that's going to affect them. But.
I don't know. I looked at. I don't want to be a numbers geek, but they're on like the beginning of the curve, and it's already projecting worse than.
So it hasn't hit them at all yet, but it's just starting.
I think so. Yeah. Wow. I don't think it's. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, maybe they're more mature than us. Who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre how this thing works, especially with
it's all up in the air.
In terms of like who it affects and how hard it affects people, and some people have signs and symptoms, and some people are, and it's there's no consistency. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like with flu and influenza, at least you kind of know the trajectory of how and what's going to happen, and
pretty predictable, So
right, and it's deadly.
It is.
There's a shit ton of people dying from flu every year.
Absolutely.
But the problem with this one, there's no immunity to it. Like with the flu, you can get a flu shot and you still have like at least partial immunity.
Right.
So you can like soften the blunt of the disease.
Right.
Versus this, there's no immunity. No one knows how it. I mean, they're learning every day.
But I kind of agree with some of their thoughts also, where I feel like this kind of virus is going to be a yearly thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, once it's out, it's out. Yeah.
And I kind of think about it. It's like, I wonder what it's going to be like in like 5 years, where this is actually going to be a normal thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, because I'm trying to pay as much attention to it without getting overwhelmed. I don't pay attention to any news. That's the worst thing you can do, because they blow out everything out of proportion, making doomsday predictions. That's just stupid.
And curated the way to scare people. So.
Yeah, it's just clickbait. Don't listen to news. I would say that this is the opportunity that the news, like standard news organization, had to really make them feel like they are a reliable source of information, and they just blew it.
Well, for them, it's numbers of like attention and eyes. They're just trying to get as many people on their side as they can. So
yeah. But I feel like no one was prepared, and we were kind of sleeping on the idea of viruses for the longest time. Mm-hmm. And if this becomes a new norm, I think it will be easier once hospitals and and generally the country is more prepared, meaning like there's treatments and
Right.
hospital beds, ICU beds, all of those things. Like once there's, because the biggest issue like with this lockdown thing is it's not really that they want to prevent people from being infected. They want to prevent from a spike of infection.
Exactly. The overwhelmed hospital,
Exactly. Right. That's the biggest issue that we want to prevent here. Just to like, that's the whole flattening the curve idea.
Yeah.
And once there's enough safe, enough stockpile of not medicine, but like let's say ventilators and beds and all that stuff, so that the hospitals don't get like completely overwhelmed. Once there's like preparation done for that, I don't think the seasonal thing is going to be that bad. And also with the treatments, there's like, I think there's like 10 drugs that have like really high potential of reducing the mortality rate of this thing that are in the trial right now. They're like testing them out. I think there was a malaria drug that they were saying shows some promise, but they still need more information. But yeah, who knows? I feel like this is the worst of this specific virus right now, and any sort of like reoccurrence of it is going to be there, but I don't think it's going to be.
But this is also going to change people's daily habits about just how they live in general. I mean, this is already done.
Right.
It's affected everything permanently to some degree.
This
more used to wearing masks and stuff like that. People are going to be more used to like being more distant from each other. That's just going to be more normal. Yeah.
The fact that people are not shaking hands already changed the amount of people getting infected by flu, like dramatically.
Yeah. I think people are going to be very conscious of this for the next couple of years, I would say.
Yeah.
I would hope so again. What I'm a little bit afraid of is like when stuff like this settles and time passes even a little bit, people forget and they just go back to
when SARS, the swine, the first SARS came out, it wasn't bad because it wasn't. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as this one because it wasn't spreading so fast.
It wasn't contagious.
And they started doing vaccine, and they just like fuck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually, but I think with this one, I don't think they're gonna do that because this is spreading so fast. There's just like, we cannot shut down economy every 4 months and then restart it. That's just not. I mean, I feel like whether it's gonna be bad or not, we're gonna eventually reach a point where they're just gonna have to open the economy.
Yeah.
Because just the amount of misery that comes out of just not having people not having work will eventually surpass sort of like the benefits of people not getting sick.
Yeah, and it's the crazy part of the time. Like even right now, as we're having a conversation, like at this moment, this is like the peak moment where it's like the worst at the moment for a lot of places.
Yeah.
So as we're recording this and as we share it, it's like right here as we're talking, this is like the peak of all the stuff that's going on, which is why it's on everyone's mind. So. Yeah,
I was just having I was recording an episode with Eitan earlier on. We were just talking about the similar topic, and I was just like, you know what, like when this comes out, it might be like bro science complete bullshit because everything is like completely different. So, but you're not joining this podcast to get medical advice, obviously.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like in a couple of years, when people are listening to this kind of stuff again and rewatch it, it's like, man, that's the way it was back then. It's like that's how they saw that virus. And
I wonder how it's gonna be like a year from now. Someone listening to an episode like this is like, "Whoa, those guys were really overacting, huh?" Or it's like, "Oh, those guys were super careful. Thank God,"
But we needed to. I think that's what's gonna help it change going into the future. So
I asked this question to Eitan as well, and I'm curious what would be your answer. Like, how do you? I mean, we're eventually gonna get out of this situation, and things will quote unquote get back to normal. What do you think is gonna change permanently from this moment on? Like, what do you predict? I mean, obviously, it's like sort of like shooting in the dark a bit, but what do you feel is gonna happen?
Well, I mean, things that have already been happening are only going to get exponentially worse in some ways. For instance, things like the separation between people within wealth to poverty. So that's going to be a huge increase as well. As it's already been going that direction, it's going to be even more so. So people that are looking for work, it'll be much tougher. I mean, it directly even affects someone like me, where I'm trying to a book right now. I did a Kickstarter for it and I finished it, but the printer that I was working with in LA shut down. The division, the parent company that was, running it from Minnesota, they shut down the LA division, let go all the people. They're out of jobs. So even in the creative field, I think it can definitely be but then so will they come back? I don't know. And that's the question. Where do these people go now? So I think in terms of, the job field, and again, the people that are doing these kind of essential jobs and the people that work in the day to day, they're the backbone of what this does. So when that again now further erodes, it's going to be terrible.
What do you think? I mean, this is kind of like interesting case because, there was one of the Democratic candidates, Andrew Yang, talking about universal basic income idea. That was like his platform to run it. Right. And sort of in a way, that's what the government is doing now with the checks, right?
Yeah,
to a certain degree.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
Yeah, I wonder how is that? I mean, it's almost like a test case for it in a way. Like all of a sudden, hey, the government all of a sudden has trillions of dollars to spend. I thought like everyone's broke. What's going on?
But that's the problem, is that it's just a temporary Band-Aid, and it's not.
Of course.
Anyway, what are the people going to do with that money? What is it actually going to pay for? It's not enough. People need work. They need something consistent, and I think people who are able to adapt and are going to be able to bring their businesses online, business will change at this point. They're going to find out, hey, we don't need to go to the office. We can meet online now. We don't have to actually drive out there. That will change also a lot of things. The fact that we actually don't even have to leave our house in a lot of ways. Of course, like I said, the businesses that survive are the ones that are going to adapt. So even for someone like people like us that work in entertainment, I can take my stuff online. I can teach online. I can keep this going as long as I need to. So has it really affected me in any way? Right now, not so much. But people that are unable to adapt, definitely they'll fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. I feel like everyone who's able to adapt right now is going to thrive when it all comes out at the other end. Especially with I feel like I want to throw like a positive light to it. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that will realize that why we're having those giant studios in those expensive areas and paying an enormous amount of money to like leasing companies or like the whoever is the owner just to lease the space that we don't need, because everyone who worked with us is doing the same job, exactly same job from home. In some cases they are more productive even because of the lack of interruptions that are happening. I think it's more true for smaller companies as well.
True.
And I feel like that will directly affect the real estate, like the commercial real estate prices.
Down,
that will go down for sure. I mean, unless there has to be some like shady speculation if it doesn't go down.
No, sure, absolutely.
But usually when commercial prices go down, the retail prices go down. I mean, the residential prices will go down too.
Exactly. I think quality of life in general will improve. People are going to be more free to spend time with people they want to, with their family. They can also have they want. You come into the office like once in a week or twice a week to actually have face to face and do updates and meetings, but then the rest of the time you're off site. I think that's a more viable way of working, especially even for big companies or smaller companies. But I think what it does is it kind of just proves that it can work. This can happen. And I've been online mostly for the last number of years of working freelance, so I already know it works for me. But people are now starting to see that even when you work for, let's say, a studio or some kind of office job, this can also be applied. So it can have a lot of positive effects. In the moment, that transition will be tough, really tough. But once that transition goes through, the other side of it, I think people will benefit greatly.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking with Eitan, it seems like Naughty Dog has adapted like really quick.
Yeah,
like really.
But I mean, even
quick,
someone like Eitan is doing that too personally himself. I think he started like doing mentorships online as well.
Yeah.
So, I think the artists that are like currently adapting immediately are the ones that are going to be able to really take definitely take light of the situation.
What do you think it's gonna do to like regular jobs? I mean, I don't want to talk about regular jobs market specifically because I just have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah.
I'll be just like, it will be just complete bro science at this point.
Right.
But talking about, when I talk regular jobs market, I'm talking about people who are working in the industry.
Yeah.
in the entertainment industry specifically, let's say, because that's the market that I'm most familiar with.
Hmm.
And comparably, people who are not on the behest of working for the studios, but they are able to make a living doing the stuff that they love and then just
Yeah.
monetizing it.
Right.
How do you think that paradigm's going to shift?
Well, again, I think that could also have a lot of positive effects as well too, because it's now pushing them further to really produce a pipeline, a system where their businesses are going to be much smoother. They become more familiar with it. They take it more seriously. It's
Right.
really the only way to make it viable and to make it an actual business. So people that are independent and are kind of like pushing their own stuff, whether they're contract work or whether they're kind of like making their own actual products, I think there's going to be a lot more. So I kind of even mentioned this last time to a couple group of students from like Art Center, where right now this year we talked about how like some of the shows are like closing and a lot of cancellations and stuff like this, whether
Yeah.
it's like Comic-Con potentially. But imagine what's going to happen for next year. If people are like indoors right now and they're like planning, building, creating work, all this stuff and generating, if they are, next year is going to be an explosion of just content, and people
Yeah.
are putting out stuff, books are everywhere, artwork is everywhere, design work, and specifically within our field, I feel like there's going to be a huge jump in like whether quality or whether options, but also definitely streamlining like how to like set up these kind of platforms.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's going to be a great thing for sure.
I've read this article that was talking about, it was like kind of loosely comparing current crisis, like economical crisis that has come out of this,
Yeah.
with 2008. Obviously, the circumstances are completely different from what happened in 2008 and this.
Right.
But the interesting part that caught my attention was that the startups that came out from 2008 crisis, like Uber, Postmates, Instacart, the huge growth in like Amazon, sales, all of those things. It was like, I wonder what's going to be like the new paradigm for startups with this. Like, it's very, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. Time will tell.
I would probably predict it's going to be more based on how to socially connect, because we're going to consider more social distancing. So things like even Zoom that we're using right now exploded because of this. They made so much revenue because of it, because everybody's turning to these kind of online platforms, but there's only so many. So I think a part of this is huge. I think a part of it is going to be more based on mobile effects, like going on your phone. Obviously, on Apple and stuff like that, you can use FaceTime, whatever. Facebook has their own thing. But I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for options to make it more streamlined, to make it easier, faster, where it also makes it, I guess, more of an actual option to really connect with people. And I even like the idea of having VR, having like VR where you can actually meet up in VR locations and have conversations and meetups and watch movies together and that kind of stuff. That might be even an aspect of it too, but definitely incorporating some sort of more of a social connection where people can always find ways to connect to each other in some manner. I think it's going to be even much more so. I think that's going to be a part of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to pay attention to porn industry because they are the most innovative usually.
VR, man, that's where it's coming up, I think.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
It's funny.
I think a couple of years, I think VR will be more normal. Things are getting cheaper. There's a lot more software going out there now. I have my own Oculus. I'll use that once in a while.
Yeah, I have Oculus as well.
I just jumped into it. I was playing with one of the little programs on there. It was like a movie watching program with friends. But you can go in there and just meet random people also, like jump into their feeds and watch movies that they're playing. It's kind of interesting.
The VR chat, is that the one?
No, it's an actual movie application that's offered.
Oh, okay.
It's not made by Oculus. It's made by some third party, but you can go in there and they have certain movies that you can purchase. And it's literally like a theater. You can walk in there and watch that movie, but then users can actually even host movies they're playing.
Oh, that's cool.
And so you can walk into their theater and actually watch it with just a bunch of random people.
That's cool. There's this app VR chat where you can like create an avatar.
Yeah.
And I've seen like some of I think Deadmau5 was streaming, and like people like create like little crazy anime avatars coming over, like, hey, can I take a selfie with you? It's like, and he was like, holy fuck, this is even like, you don't understand how annoying is that in real life.
Man, I think we take it not for granted, but we lose sight about how fast things have changed technology wise. Because I was watching, what was it, a movie a couple weeks ago, it was a Demolition Man, And
Hmm.
Demolition Man, I love that movie because it gave you like great insight what the future would be like. Nobody touches each other in that movie. Nobody gives you a high five. Nobody
Right.
hands. They're all like doing this kind of thing, and they even like find curse words and stuff like this. It's a super controlled environment, but also like how they socialize. Like on their TV, they would just turn it on. People can talk to each other.
Yeah.
But this is just an everyday thing we have now. Like the idea that we can just go on our phones or on our computers and just on our TVs, click on a webcam, just talk to each other live in the moment. I don't know. I think it sounds so normal nowadays, but then when I watch movies back in like the 80s and 90s, it's like, holy crap. I mean, that was just fantasy.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I have a more like in the realm of what we were talking about. What is your prediction um, for education? Because I feel like that's a disruption that is
Huge.
really difficult to crack.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm learning education art online, easy, you
Yeah.
know. But generally speaking, like so. For instance, I spoke with John Park,
Yeah.
and they've been hit by the whole social distancing because like both the schools that they have, Inland and in
Yeah.
Burbank, are physical location,
Yeah.
so they are adapting obviously.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting for me to listen to that. I mean, it sounds pretty obvious, but hearing like how much struggle that whole predicament brings to like
Oh, sure.
scramble to make sure that you have students that are already enrolled.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that they get what they paid for?
Right.
So now we have to like figure out the way to deliver that.
Yes.
We don't with Learn Squared and in the many cases what you've been doing with CGMA and other online learning resources, that's not really a problem because that's what it is designed for.
Mhm.
But to me, it's like I wonder if it's a nail to the coffin of standard universities, like regular universities and art universities as well, Art Center, AI, Otis, like all of those places that rely almost exclusively
Sure.
on being on site. That's
Yeah.
what, because like my question is this, like, why would I pay such a large amount of money
Yeah.
for a tuition if I'm
Right.
not even there?
Yeah. It's that's a huge problem right now in terms of what they're trying to problem solve right now. I can give you a lot of thoughts on this. Because obviously I'm experiencing it right now because I'm teaching at Art Center, and so I'm having
Yeah.
to negotiate what to do with this current situation. So, just how do I start with this? I mean, there's so much to process and so much to explain, but
I
for
don't
a
want to
place,
put anyone on the spot, by the way. If there's like anything, because obviously we have to look at it from, you work with Art Center, so I'm not trying to put you against and say
oh
like, oh,
no no
let's
no,
talk shit.
I have no sides to any particular
Yeah,
element. I look at it more from the sense of making sure that the student gets the best experiences they can.
right, exactly.
Um,
That's the whole
so
point.
I agree with you in the sense that are universities and stuff like this even worth it anymore because it is astronomical in the prices. And I know all the breakdowns, and I give this to all my students also, very subjectively, stepping back and say, hey, take a look at this, and these are your options, and you choose now your plug and play, and you move in that direction. But do I still think then places like these universities are even viable or even valid anymore at this point? Because you're talking about certain numbers that are multiple times compared to what we offer online or other platforms like Brainstorm or CDA at physical schools even too.
Right.
So Art Center, all these places, Otis, CalArts, again, right now we can even talk numbers. I have no problems talking about it. Art Center at the moment in a single term for a student is well over $20,000 for a single term. That's just tuition. So you add 3 terms in a year, you add, that's just tuition only. You talk about living costs, you talk about materials, food, you're spending over $100,000 a year.
60K.
So upwards of 100,000 with all the other stuff.
Right. Yeah. That's
So
insane.
it's high. And so then we talk about numbers like, well, how did it start? Like for me, when I came into Art Center, a single term cost $8,000. Okay. And that was in 2001. So at the
Right.
end of 2004, I ended up owing 12 grand a term. Now, that was in 2004. After this number of years, we're at 20K. So is the experience any different than it was back then to what it is now? And why do we have such a discrepancy between that? For one, I think it's because the level of interest is there. The
Right.
demand is being met based on the price, and people are willing to pay it. Why is this
Yeah.
the case? Because a lot of the money where it's coming from currently with the students are coming from outside, international, and these people have money, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to places like in China. So the demographic has changed where right now a lot of the students are coming from Asia, well, China specifically. Back then, 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot more Korean people too. There still are, but a lot of the money is coming from that area. So they're willing to pay for it. And why? Because they have the pedigree, they have the name, and the
Yeah.
parents are willing to pay for that name on top of hopefully getting the best education as they can. But I am on the
Right.
side that the education you get at Art Center compared to places like Learn Squared or Brainstorm, in my opinion, are equal. They're just as good as each other, you know? So
Yeah.
you don't have to go to Art Center to get the best education. Not anymore. You can go to places outside of it to get the education. So then again, why should I pay for 20 grand at Art Center if I can go to these places? There's the one aspect of it where I feel like the physical school will never really disappear. It might hopefully, well, again, be ways where people options, or these schools also look for other ways of communicating to their students and not really asking for that much of a price. So for them, you could say the excuse is the resources, the facilities, the instructors hands-on, one-on-one times is why you're paying for that much.
Right.
Okay, they can say that. People may not agree in terms of like where that money is going, but regardless of it, for me, why I loved Art Center so much and why I still think it's somewhat valid today is because of that community. It's because of those people.
Yeah.
And you can't get that same kind of like teamwork and project building as you would online. Where you meet those students online, you see them, you see their work, and then will you ever talk to them again in the future? Unless they really take the initiative to do so, then maybe they can carry it through. But imagine like when we were in school, I started with friends first term 2001. We became close friends all the way through 4 years of Art Center. You know, we're brothers and sisters in arms. You know, we're going through this together, and we're bouncing off of each other. We're partying together. We're having fun and drawing and working really hard. And we come out the other side, really lifelong friends. So guys like James Pake and John Park and all these other guys are people I still know, and I really appreciate and love what they do. And we still are just friends.
Yeah.
Well, I know people in every part of the industry, animation to film to games to fashion to illustration, everywhere have a connection. And it's because of a school like Art Center. Now, I'm not going to say that's a guaranteed thing. If you go there, automatically you build this, fantastic network. But the network that I do have, I consider priceless. You know, so. But the thing is, well, can I still get that kind of experience outside of if I go, to these other schools? Like I said, you potentially could. And there's no reason why you can't. But I also do agree that the tuition of what they're asking for is not equal to what they're getting back compared to
Right.
the education of what they're getting from somewhere else. So the huge problem right now, what's going on, I can let you know, is like Art Center at the moment is going to be teaching online, as they go into the summer also. They already announced this. So tuition wise, then are they asking for full price? Potentially, yes. They haven't really given numbers. I don't really know, but I have a feeling they will. Even this current term, students are still paying for their tuition. We went full, in class, live classes, and all of a sudden we're online now. We still have like 3 or 4 weeks left, and they're still paying full prices on things. So other schools around LA have actually given refunds and given obviously cancel even tuitions for some of those places. And I think Art Center should be doing this. But what I'm telling people at Art Center is like, well, if this is going to happen in the summer, honestly, take it off. Don't come back summer. Come back in the fall. See what happens. If you go back into school, you will. But if you have to go to a different choice, you should. And I don't think being an Art Center, being an online school should be, I don't think it's right to be asking for that same kind of tuition.
Yeah.
Because you
You're
don't have
losing
access.
that.
No, you don't have access to the facilities. You don't have access to the resources or the instructors as a one-on-one physical moment of time. So
It's like, it's like if we all of a sudden decided that Learn Squared class costs $4,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So another part of the problem right now is that Art Center was not built from the ground up to be an online school. So that means all their educational curriculums, their instructors now have to be trained. A lot of them are not used to teaching online. Some of them are well into their old age, and some of them are not used to using digital formats. I'm not saying they won't be able to figure it out, but they'll need time.
Yeah.
Kind of new platform. So the educational quality now drops also too. So like I said, it doesn't make sense as to what honestly, Art Center should have just shut down. They said, we're taking a summer off, no classes. We're going to figure this all out. Here's a new platform. And then people can come back if they want to.
Yeah. Question is if they can, financially.
Yeah, they can.
Because that's the problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's also the question of like, well, does that mean that to make up for this, do instructors should get pay cuts and stuff like that? I hope not. I mean, some of these instructors, that's their full-time job, and that's all they have left over.
Yeah.
But that's another kind of question, but yeah, it's a very touchy situation in terms of being not a public school, but a big university that has this number of students. You're talking about thousands of people, and the logistics behind it that I'm sure is a headache to go through right now. So again, I commend actually Art Center what they're doing, because they're figuring it out, but it's just there are a lot of discrepancies and there's a lot of questions as to like what is right and what is wrong. And these students, I think, still should now take it upon their own responsibility and decision as to where they go next. And uh, do I think some of these schools still should remain physical? I think so. If we look outside of our department, let's like at Art Center, we look at like product design or transportation design. These
Yeah.
kinds of design industries need to be there in person. You got to actually use the facilities. You got to actually build three-dimensional products. You know, they have to build things. Where illustration, entertainment design, okay, we can just do it in 2D in our computer at home. But a
Yeah.
lot of the students need to be somewhere to work on things. So that's why it'll definitely be that kind of case. But you know, in terms of my recommendation advice for students, I say, well, you know, if you're curious about these kind of schools, I can tell you anything about this based on my experience, but it's my experience. So you should go there and find out, honestly. Like take a term or two and just, I know it's still expensive, but go find out if it works. Take as much as you can, be disciplined, then leave.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't need to graduate. A degree doesn't mean anything. I just need the discipline, network, and the connections. I'll bust my ass doing it. And then I'm going to go to like Learn Square. Then I'll go to Brainstorm. I'll go to some other places and get the extra education that fill the gaps in between things. Because at the end of the day, you can't go to one place and get everything you want. You know, nowadays you have to kind of go to a lot of different places and get the education.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even if you like, I guess Brainstorm is a good example where you can get like a really good foundation, because the way John and James set it up is really well done.
Right.
Yeah, even our school, we do have some of like a foundational work, but it's more of like we have a completely different, like a little bit of different approach
But that's
as well.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, we're more personality based, I would say. Sort of like the level of instructors, not only just a world class instructor. It's more about sort of like a project based learning.
And you know, I think Brainstorm was kind of the same way, where it wasn't about foundation at first either. It was about helping people to get jobs, you know, so they was advanced stuff. But now they kind of opened up a little bit because of it expanding. But for as like the independent instructor guys like me or anyone else out there, does it get a bit tricky? I'm glad I jumped in and I kind of predicted this, and I was able to initiate that start for me in the beginning of the year. So I set up my own platform, started teaching my own classes, and you know, filled them up really well. So as I go into the summer, do I still kind of worry? I do a little bit, mainly because now that we have converted everyone to online, not only do have more students have options, but then it starts to crowd the field, and we have to be very mindful of pricing now too. So how do we undercut people? Like, we don't want to do that. These are all my friends still. I want to make sure their schools are doing good too. And I don't want to take business away from them, and nor would they want to do that with me. You know, I'm assuming. So,
I think the market is bigger than we think.
That's the thing about this too, is that the market is big and the community of people that are out there is huge. But the problem, I feel like, is that as this kind of quarantine and virus is hitting, people are now having less extra income to spend for stuff like this.
That I agree on. Yeah. That's for sure
what they choose.
Yeah, I agree on this. That's one of the reasons we made like the first lesson of all of our classes free.
Right.
So people don't have to make a financial choice to figure out if they want to buy a class or not. We also made it, I think by the time this comes out, it's still going to be on 40% discount, which is
exactly
something we almost never do.
No, at this point, we have to be very creative marketingly.
Yeah. But for us, the decision is sort of like twofold. We want obviously ease the entry to the platform, to to access the content that people are after, and students are after, because like we stand behind what we do in terms of the classes. Like every instructor we had so far, just this is the kind of stuff when you take a class, you learn how that person does the work on a daily basis.
Right.
It kind of comes back to your initial comment that people kind of want to have sort of like be led the way on how to do things. So we do emphasize the idea of foundation is really important, but we also we're what we're trying to build is this idea of that you don't have to go to other places to figure out that that's the wrong place to go to.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily talking about Brainstorm, CDA, any of those, because I don't like, personally, we never look at that as a competition.
Sure.
For us, it's just friends, you know?
Right.
I feel like the amount of students that want to learn the craft is far outgrowing the amount of available classes or people that are actually aware that those classes exist. I think that it's similar to, you know, what I commend Joe Rogan for saying that a lot, and he kind of built a comics community because of it, where, you know, he was one of the first people just to like really encourage stand-up comedians to be better and support them, you know, and he's like against that famine mentality of like, oh, like I have to take over and be here and you know, be the only person that does it and undercut my competition and make sure that they never get success. Because he feels like if everyone's successful, then more people are aware of it, right? And then the more people are interested in it. And there's 7 billion people on Earth. Like, think about it, right? So but yeah, I wonder, like, my biggest thing is, you know, I have a kid, a toddler. Yeah. And no school is fucking disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I feel like I feel really bad for, not feel really bad, but I try to you know, feel for other parents as well. Oh, it's just so difficult with kids, because they get bored like so quick. And when they go to school, when they have like those activities that, you know, you don't have to like pay attention to, it's like, teacher is doing their job, great, I don't have to pay attention to it, right? Then they get tired, and when they come home, they have way less energy, and then when they have way less energy, they go to sleep early, and then you can like do your own stuff, you know. Right, exactly. Versus now it's like 24/7 tornado. My daughter doesn't go to bed until like 1 a.m. She wakes up early. It's like, where do you find this all energy? It's like,
oh man, I wonder, it's like how I would deal with that kind of situation, and especially with the amount of stuff I take on. But I look outside and I look at my friends and I look at my siblings, and, you know, they all have toddlers as well too, and they're all going through the kind of same things you're talking about. So it's like, well, looking from the outside right now, I'm glad I'm not a part of that. Which I'm sure the kids are still a lot of fun, and I do love being around my nephews and nieces, but having one of my own right now is definitely not in the window just yet, but who knows.
Right. So I want to take we kind of like derailed from the original topic, like far into the weeds, and like we're like deep in the forest. Like, oh, we're in the Amazon jungle now. What the fuck is happening?
It's great about conversations like this.
But originally, you know, like we're talking about, you know, we kind of went to education, because that's where, I guess that's where the bulk of what you do is, right? Being an educator.
It's kind of split. It's educational part is a huge aspect of my day-to-day and hours that I put into as well. But on top of that, it's split to my own personal endeavors and projects. Because I do a lot of self-publishing. You know, I create my own projects of products through books, through actual, you know, sculptures and whatever the case is, working with other brands and working with other artists to produce things. So that does take a lot of my energy and time. And I will also still take contract jobs. And usually I limit it to about maybe 4 or 5 big ones in a year. And so, you know, when they come my way, I'll pick and choose. If I find that's a really good one up my alley, I'll stick with it. This last year was about probably 3 bigger contract gigs that I took on. But I try to time those as well as I can, so that way it's kind of like on the point of break from classes, but I'm also working on my own thing. So I tend to juggle those 3 main things. Right. But definitely, like, my own personal stuff is where I'm able to like reinvigorate in that energy and the enthusiasm to constantly push things. The education is definitely a huge passion, and it's a part where I can continue to really build up my foundations, network, build up a bigger web of connection to people. And so it kind of like feeds into each other, and all of it is kind of tied through the social media of Instagram, where people can see what I work on, but also, you know, get to see a little bit how I teach using things like live streams. But then when they come to my classes, I kind of sell them on the idea of how to do stuff, and then they spread it, and it continues to grow from there. So
Right.
those are I would say right now, primarily those at the moment are the two things I'm really kind of venturing on. So at the current moment, it would be like the graphic novel that I just finished. And so that one I'm
Okay.
publishing right now. I just finished a new book also because in the class that I teach, I also created like a textbook in a way, like a notebook of all my lecture notes. So I
Hmm.
made a new edition, which is going to be printed under Superani, the Kim Jong-gi group. So that
Okay.
will be
That's
coming out at
cool.
some point in the future. So it does center a lot on books because I still do a lot of Comic Cons and shows, and those are the areas where I would test out, like producing my own content, making my own books, and then of course using social media to help promote that more. So that's it's a tough balance for people that are looking from the outside, but it's become so normalized because it's been, like I said, 10+ years of doing it. So it's
Yeah.
still one of those things now where I still find fun. People ask me all the time, like, do you ever want to go back to like a studio? It would very much be dependent on the project and the people. Not really the money, but definitely in terms of what I'd be working on. But nothing like that has
Right.
really come my way just yet. Mostly contract gig kind of stuff. I think even just generally trending wise, a lot of studios are looking for contract workers anyway. A lot of the whole full time positioning is still there, but I don't really come across those as much, honestly, these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, I mean, what's your, how do you approach scheduling? You know, because you're very similar to me in terms of like the amount of different things you're
Yeah.
trying to focus on.
I
And
diversify as much as I can.
right, yeah. So having like for me, it's like having multiple jobs, multiple
Yeah.
projects,
Yeah.
running a company, doing a podcast. Podcast is more like a philanthropy at this point,
Sure. Sure. Sure.
honestly. But I mean, I have a goal to grow it, and when you grow a podcast, it becomes a business eventually,
Of course.
and you can monetize it in a way.
Right.
So that's on my horizon, obviously, and then obviously school and finding time for family, all of those things, personal projects.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to sort of like it becomes almost like a game where you have to organize
Oh,
things day
constantly.
by day and like
Yeah.
adapt. How do you approach that? What is your scheduling like?
It's a balance of both, like in the immediate of being able to adapt and organize it, like you're saying, but also kind of a long term, not super long term, but more like a weekly to bi-weekly thing. And how I kind of center my schedule at the moment is that I know I have my two main priorities, which is my own personal projects and things I have to create, and then the actual
Hmm.
classes I have to do. How I kind of schedule it is that my classes are the immediate. I have to do that right now. I got to schedule it today, tomorrow, next day after that, and I go by week to week because we have a
Right.
week structure. I know what days I'm teaching, how many hours I go for. For the personal project, it's not necessarily a day to day, but I know I have to go by the end of next 2 weeks. I have to complete this, or
Right.
by the week after that, I have to contact these people. So it doesn't matter what day it actually happens, but it's more in the sense of I know that there's a general deadline I have to hit within that schedule of time. So as I'm
Hmm.
teaching, whatever amount of hours I have in between those spaces, I'll use that opportunity to either work on the things I need to for the projects or whatever the case is, but also even use that time for other things. Because people ask me, it's like, are you working 24/7? I mean, I'm working every day, but that doesn't mean I'm working every single second and minute. There are days
Right.
where I will take off. Like after class is done, I was like, okay, I'm gonna hang out and I'll go out. If we could go outside, I'll like go to a museum or something like this and go travel and do a lot of drawings on location, go to a cafe and hang out, go with friends and do what I need to. So I still like to very much keep a day-to-day social life open. And I think that's also a really tough balance for the younger people. Like, how do I have social life and also working life mixed together to some degree? Like, should I separate them? And most people recommend always that like separation. Like, your social life is your social life. Keep your work to your work, and don't try to intermix them too much. But for me, I definitely tend to kind of go in and out on both sides quite organically. Um, a lot of times, would I bring some of that work in there to like even events of hangouts and meetups, especially if I'm creating my own content for books and stuff like this to some degree, but a lot of times I don't. I will separate to some degree. But like I said, I'm able
Hmm.
to jump in and out of it because I'm able to flip the switches in my brain of when I need to work on those areas and when I can then, get off of it. So it doesn't take me as much this time of ritual to like, get spooled up and feel energy to go, okay, I'm gonna start working on this now. I can sit down and
Right.
just start doing it. There's no wasted time when that comes up. So in that sense, I can be efficient and also jump into other things when I need to. So, for instance, if I want to do like hobby work, I'm gonna make a model and paint that kind of stuff. I like doing it because those other experiences, continue to also feed into the creative juices, and it helps go back into the other actual work I got to do. And so it all feels very cyclical and it kind of feeds into each other constantly.
Yeah.
where I don't necessarily feel like I'm compartmentalizing. One thing is definitely assisting another part of it. It keeps me, again, focused. It keeps me energized. All of them require the same amount of energy to put in. It's not like I'm prioritizing one as being the most important, but I definitely can schedule as to when I should be doing things at the moment. I can flip it on, and then I can switch gears and go
Right.
a bit faster into other things. So that's kind of how I center it: education, immediate, personal stuff. I know like a bi-weekly kind of thing in terms of scheduling.
Yeah, you have your anchor point, which
Exactly.
is like your most important thing. This is my main absolute top priority
Right.
that no matter what has to be done, which is
Yeah,
my
exactly.
classes. And
Exactly.
then everything else becomes like I can prioritize like
Right.
this is more important than that.
Yes.
And but I'm not gonna be a slave to like
Sure. And being a
my own
slave to it is, I think, one of the
calendar.
hard things to break away from, because
Right.
people feel
Yeah.
like they're doing something else, they feel guilty. I get so many students telling me, I feel guilty when I'm not drawing. It's like, well, yeah, you should be drawing as much as you can, but you shouldn't feel guilty if you're not, because it's more about the mindset, because you can still be doing
Yes.
other stuff and absorbing in a way that can help you with your creative field. And that could be applied towards your drawing later on, whether for storytelling or your observations or your
Hmm.
experiences, the things you're watching, whatever the case is. So my brain is always on constantly, so. But for
Yeah.
younger people, I can imagine that wouldn't be something that they can take advantage of. But after 20 years in doing this, I think for both of us, we can kind of understand how we work. But it takes time, as
Yeah,
usual.
we're very similar in terms of how we organize our times for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Because to me, it's always like I have my main priority for a day. I'm more of a sort of like a daily scheduler.
yeah, exactly.
So for me, it's like okay, between like let's say Monday through Thursday, that's the one project that I'm doing,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna focus, make sure that within a certain amount of time the work is done. I'm meeting or exceeding expectations. I'm
Sure,
happy with the results, and then I can move on to whatever else is needed to be done.
exactly.
If I don't do it, I'm not gonna be sad about it because
Yeah,
the major goal that I've set up to do, my main priority is done.
yeah,
And then anything else on top is obviously like okay, a good to have
yeah,
kind of moment.
yeah.
Um,
Even like for example, for like today, my scheduling was this morning from 11 to 2. I had a mentorship, finished that. That was the last final day. Then it was you with, from 3 till whenever. And then I have another 2 meetings with students, as not because they're even signed up. They're not even like kids I'm working with as a mentor. They're not even direct
right.
students of mine. They're just people that at our art center, they're the past students. They ask me, hey, can I have an hour of your time to talk to you? I'll give it to them. So
Yeah.
I'll prioritize towards people if they need that kind of help. And there was 2 students I have to talk to online. I'll just do so, spend an hour with them, and then from there afterwards, grab some food, do my own personal thing. But then I know I have to work on some additional things through email, but then also kind of wrapping up something for the printing. So my
Yeah.
day gets full really quickly.
So how do you avoid procrastination? Obviously, it's one of those things that happen to everybody, no matter
Oh,
how
sure.
well organized we are,
Yeah.
whether we're experienced or not. Every single person I know has the moment of doubt and
Yeah.
procrastination.
Yes.
Is there like, is there a way, like a specific way you deal with this? Like sometimes, personally, like sometimes it's just like I give in and sort
Hmm.
of like maybe I just need a break. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just literally tell to myself, stop being a little bitch, and like force myself to do.
Right.
And it's almost like, yeah, just don't be that person. Just
Right.
do it.
I think generally most artists will approach it in that way, which is either you give into it, okay, I'm going to break away, do something else, or you force yourself to do it.
Right.
Uh, for me personally, those two obviously exist. It's like I got to do it. I don't feel like it, but I got to force myself because I know that this deadline's coming up. And so
Right.
there's that factor of like a sense of fear, of not the fear of like having to start, but in that fear of like, oh shoot, the other part of the fear, which is I got to get this done because it's due at this point. And
Right.
so, so that's a part that kickstarts you a little bit. And once you then get started, that fear subsides, and you're now into the game, and you're kind of like turning the gears, and it feels more comfortable. Actually, just start working. It's that first hurdle, right? That first jump that's the toughest,
Yeah.
because that expectation or the fear of actually falling or not really able to kind of get started, or again being scared of the project, is looming, and it gets really hard to overcome. It seems hard to consume. And for
Yes.
me, I think an example of that is the comic that I was working on. I finished this project in 2019. I started it in 2017. This project took me 2 years to make, this comic book. And I've never made a graphic novel in my life ever as a
Right.
fully printed thing. And when I began, And I told people this, some students will ask me, it's like, how's a blacksmith coming? And I'll tell them my general process of making it. And as I was doing it in the beginning, I was scared as shit of starting that project. I didn't know how to begin because I never made this project before. I knew I could like draw stuff and create characters and worlds and designs, but to like write the script and to like package it and format it, design it, do the pages, everything, it was quite, overwhelming. So in the beginning, I was really, really scared shitless. So I talked to people constantly. And I think, again, going back to the very beginning, the people assisting me really helped me a lot to get started because it helped me confirm my own instincts by saying, okay, that is the way I should begin. Because at first I was just assuming, hey, you know what? I need to find the easier route, looking for the easy way out. And so I would talk to them saying, how really want to do this? I want to hire somebody to assist me to write or do this or do that. And every single one of them said, don't do this. Just get started. Make it crappy. I know that you're kind of scared about the way it's going to come out, but no matter what the result is, you'll do another one. You'll make it better. And it's the same way as I teach when I draw like things of observations. The first sketch sucks. And the more you do it, you get better. You get more familiar to it. So even with this project, I just had to begin. And the way to begin was to talk to people. To say, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of that idea? How would I just start this part? And so as they gave me advice, like, okay, that seems like a plan I can follow in terms of the whole thing seems really hard to understand and absorb, but at least that one little part in terms of just that first step, okay, I just have to sit down and just put some notes in, a couple of words, maybe not an entire script, but just a couple of thoughts. And then from there, it'll build from something from that part. So if you're working on something, let's say for school of education, homework, if you think about like what the end goal is and that really big piece you're visualizing, whether it's an illustration, a concept piece, a design, and you see it, you can almost picture it, but it seems so distant and so far away. And so that start of it becomes really scary. But then if you don't think of that, but think of just that first part, which is how do I just begin this? Maybe it's just looking at the right images. Maybe it's just a part of the research. Maybe I have to write a few words down. And as I get some images and visualizations in my head, I can get started in terms of just a couple of light sketches. So as you just kind of get the ease of into it, that ball starts to roll and you're able to kind of maintain that momentum. But that first start, every single moment of the project is always hard to kind of just sit down and hard to start with. But I think if you're able to just start from the smallest bit, take a small chunk of it, and you can start to break away a lot more pieces. For me, I think that's a big part of how I just start working. Like there's a big project, like this recent book I just finished. I finished it in 2 months. I had like 80 pages of drawings to do, full pages of lectures. And so it's like, well, it's a lot of pages I got to complete in these 2 months. How do I just start with this stuff? Well, okay, I don't want to just start drawing the pages out. I might mess up or I don't think it's going to come out very well. But I just sat down, just wrote down a few notes and just thumbnailed really loosely, not really caring about the quality of it, just getting that kind of gear going. And then I felt more comfortable. And the more comfortable and more, calm I felt, it felt easier to just move into that project and just get that ball rolling. So
having that first step, like when you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh my God, it's so big. It's kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier. This assertiveness of finding the right thing, whether it's learning or starting a new project. Actually, those two are parallel. Where exactly. It's like, okay, where do I start? Start somewhere, and be open to the idea that whatever you're doing might be wrong. But if you're asking yourself questions and doubting, or like just even the fact that you're doubting whether you're doing the right thing, but you're still doing it and exploring ideas or exploring paths of maybe doing things better. That's where I think, you kind of like start learning if that's the right thing to do.
People are very much into their routines. And when you have a certain routine and you try to begin, you already understand that maybe that routine wasn't working and it's really hard to like get started. So I think also being very open, as you're saying, to like finding different routines and different methods to approach it from a different angle and perspective is also really helpful too. Like Norm, my mentor, used to tell me like the way he came up with ideas was in the shower. He would have a China marker and like draw on the tiles and just like draw in the shower, because like he would come in the time when he was feeling really comfortable and just, washing and cleaning and you just draw on the tiles like that.
That's interesting.
I think letting yourself be open to absorb or express information in different ways, whether it's like, I don't know, reading a book or watching a film, but actually sketching or watching someone else sketch or looking through the process of different types. It might give you that little click that, hey, that's what it is right there,
Yeah, couldn't agree more. To give you a more personal example, I'm doing my short film. And there was one shot, I was actually talking about this with Eitan. There was this one shot that I wasn't happy with. And then my friend Ash was like looking at the edit and it's like, yeah, this shot sucks. So I recently started redoing it, and
Right.
it's one of the most. It went from like a pretty simple shot to one of the most complex shots to create, even though it's like only a few frames
Yeah.
in the animation. And I was just like, oh fuck, I don't want to. And you know, when you work with software, you get software crashes, and it discourages even more.
Yeah.
And then you don't know how to approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like I kind of set up the right angle, the right idea behind it. It was like, okay, this is a good step, but now, holy crap, there's just so many layers that I need to work on in order to make it good. It's almost like if I would just paint it frame by frame, it would be probably easier. But then I just like, well, let's start with the easiest part, which is the background.
Right.
Because that's the part that I know what's going to happen with the background specifically. And and it's just from there, it's just layer by layer. It's a complex shot, but like once you crack that initial, you know, sort of spot where it's like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but just like, don't be a bitch. Just like, you know how you have experience, you've done it before, maybe on more structured way. Maybe like if you work for client, the client kind of led you through what to do with your project or what to do with that illustration to get it to a point where everyone was happy. Like if you started in the beginning and then someone showed you this is how it's supposed to look at the end, you would be like, wait a minute, how do I get there?
Yeah.
You know?
But you recognize, you know, where you were able to start to get to that solution. And that's, I think, the hard part that is.
It's definitely the hardest.
You know, it's yes, we can tout that to experience. Just over time, you're able to pick up on being more sensitive to those things. But I think as students, I think it's a big question that's really hard to answer. That becomes very much a moment where you have to discover that nobody can really tell you what that is going to be. So,
right.
Yeah.
Do you think it's more? I think it's more based on experience or ego. Like, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that comes to like being able to realize those moments and really crack those difficult moments where you feel lost?
I think ego can definitely get in the way because, again, like I said, routine is a part of that ego. You build this sense of confidence and you know that this is what's working, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. And then it's like, well, now what do I do? And so if you're able to be, again, aware enough in terms of how you can try to this is what really separates, right, designers within the field, young people to older people possibly. And we can definitely say experience is a part of that. But I think no matter what level of experience you have, your adaptability, your ability to just say, I see this information in front of me, this puzzle, and you're able to hopefully be just, like I said, sensitive to just those are the things that seem to fit together well. But I think it's just that experimentation too, that you're willing to also try and say that, hey, if this actually does fit and see if it works or not. And they're willing to spend the time and invest and commit to it to see if it does actually have a resolution or it does follow through. Where I think people can already assume what that might feel like, but then don't want to pursue it because they kill it right before they even start. That's not going to work. Oh, that's not going to be possible. I can't do this, you know? So I mean, it's a mental mindset thing that comes into play. So for sure, I think that's the area.
I agree. I think also, the experience matters a lot too. It's something you learn, you know.
I think for me, a lot of it was like learning through other people, like, you know, watching people above you. Like being in a studio, that's obviously the greatest thing. You work with other people that have been there for so long, and you can see how they solve things. So that does help dramatically.
Yeah, it definitely does. Being among artists that are better than you, you quickly learn.
You always
learn really quickly
around other people that are better than you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think with experience does give you an idea too. I think it's a conjunction of experience and ego. Yeah. Like if you can rein your ego and really just give in to the experience itself, I think that's where you're gonna start to see progress. I remember for the longest time when I was working in this industry, I almost never considered myself a designer ever. I was always looking at myself as like, you know, it's cool to call myself a concept artist or a designer, but really what I'm doing, it's not really a design. Like I never felt that I had a voice.
Interesting.
That my voice was good enough to call myself a designer, even though I would maybe project it in a way. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm a designer, but really, no, I see people that do it way better than me.
Yeah.
and it would be disingenuous if I really felt that way.
Interesting.
And I think only after like 10 plus years of being in the industry and kind of really starting to find my voice,
Yeah.
I could say like, okay, I know how to design things now.
Yeah.
But I didn't knew it how, like what to do 5 years ago. To me, it was just like I was good at rendering and illustration,
Yeah.
and maybe making the stuff look realistic, but never coming up with my own very unique ideas or style in a way, you know. So
do you consider those two things separate? Like, for instance, that question, like you wouldn't label yourself as a designer, but do you think being a concept artist and a concept designer is a two separate thing?
I don't know. It's to me, it's just titles at this point. I used to like pay more attention to it. Now it's like, you know, what matters the most. And I know it's more of a controversial approach.
Yeah.
And it might like I might completely change my mind on this. I'm not like clinging to the idea.
Yeah.
Because my idea on this changed a lot over time, anyways.
Sure.
So it's like currently I feel like the titles are meaningless.
Of course.
And the more important part is really what you're presenting.
Right.
And so like I look at projects and the kind of work that's being done. Obviously, like if you look at film, having a title of a director or, you know, production designer or you know, director of photography, those mean a lot because you have a very specific role in doing it. But whether you're a concept designer or concept artist or concept illustrator, there's such an interchangeable names that I don't think they matter a lot. I think there are specific fields in which if you call yourself a designer, that makes sense because it's a specific field that is based strictly on design.
Yes.
Right? But like concept artist, senior concept artist, I mean,
you can blend, you can overlap.
Principal concept, yeah, it's all just titles. I feel like, and maybe because I was lucky with the projects and companies I was with, you know, I mean, when I joined Naughty Dog, the Naughty Dog has a very specific way of doing games because they have a very flat structure. They do have lead artists and whatnot, but it's more for organization purposes rather than who has the voice, you know?
Right.
So it was a very weird experience for me in the beginning because like I had as much voice as to what the game's going to be as the game director. In a way, I mean, the game director would direct what the game is going to be.
Sure.
But it wasn't like my voice would be ignored because he is on a higher position.
Right.
Yeah, and no one would ever come up with an excuse like that. Oh, like I'm more senior, so shut the fuck up. Like it would never be that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So to me, that was kind of the moment where it was like, does senior or junior, like those things don't matter anymore in an environment like this. What matters is that we're making a dope project, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That really what mattered. And you know, obviously you want to have a title. Like, I mean, we're in the industry where to a certain degree the title matters. Like if someone sees you were art director, there is sometimes some kind of like weird reverence around you, even though like it might not necessarily be well deserved. But yeah, breaking it down to like concept designer or artist, it's like, yeah, it's whatever. It's good to have, you know what I look at it right now, what the title is, SEO. It's what people search for on Google.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's about it.
I kind of see it as a role of function from one person where one person can do all those things, you know, and they fit many roles and adapt.
Yeah, of course.
So there's a process of a moment to design and think, and then of course to be able to then, you know, illustrate, to go think about mood and color and lighting.
Sure.
And it fluctuates back and forth in many ways. Where can you illustrate first before you design? You know, is a question of like where you start, I guess.
Yeah, I think, you know what, it actually is a valid point. You know, it gives a description to what you can do.
Right.
Definitely. But I think it's so interchangeable in a way, unless you're in a very specific specific project or specific industry, you know, where design means specifically design and nothing else, where you know, art direction is the art direction. And it's kind of crazy because like in film, art director is completely different role than a game art director too, you know? So it's like, how do you even justify having a title that means two different things in two different industries, you know?
And I bring that up mainly because I think a lot of students also are very confused about that because they see it as an art form, but they don't bring a design mind into it sometimes. So
Right.
when they present things like portfolios, they won't really show a method of thinking. They focus so much on the technique of being able to paint and draw it,
Hmm.
and it looks technically really good, but doesn't really give me much insight as to who they are and how they do it. So
Right.
I think that can be sometimes of a problem when they misconceive, like, yeah, the titles really don't matter. I agree with that. But then I think sometimes students just assume that it's just an illustration kind of approach, an artist's approach, where I think it also is a hybrid of many things. And so they're missing some either fundamentals or I guess ways of communicating that I'm
Hmm.
thinking not enough of essentially. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
noticed in a lot of portfolios.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I don't think as much. It's the same. It's the same with the education. Like
Yeah.
whether you're gonna have a diploma or not, it
Right.
really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that matters is the quality of the kind of quality of work you show,
Exactly.
the body of work you show you can do.
Yeah.
But coming back to original sort of topic, yeah, I feel like the things like being able to recognize the patterns of what you're supposed to do in the difficult situations on
Mhm.
learning, whether I'm supposed to go with this path or that path, or which choice to make, or making choice at all. And
Mhm.
then also, later in that, okay, can I design or am I just illustrator?
Right.
How do I know this is good or not? Like, I feel like those things are definitely experience based.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't know how you feel about that topic specifically, but I feel like for the longest time this industry felt like it's being driven by software
Right.
and
Right.
and sort of like what kind of the new bells and whistles are.
Sure.
And now I feel like it's plateauing to a point where whether you are able to do realistic stuff or not,
Mhm.
whether you use Blender, 3ds Max or not, whether
Yeah.
you're painting or drawing, whether you're using traditional media, Photoshop or Clip Studio, whatever that is, like it starts to matter less
Yeah.
because the diversity of projects is becoming more and more expansive in a way. Like
Sure.
there's just more choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think it comes back down to the individual of that adaptable skill set, where whatever skills that you have gained over the many number of years, whether through software or through traditional means, that whatever opportunity or jobs and clients that are coming your way, that can you actually adapt to that and solve it. So I think it's the individual's drive and curiosity to go out there and actually learn those things, and a balance between them is a huge part of being able to be, have a long stay in the industry itself. So for a lot of students, the problem right now through education is that they're all kind of being cookie cutter trained. They're all kind of learning the
Yeah.
same thing, the same methods of thinking, the same ways of approaching stuff. And I think some of the best designers that around back at the time were always coming from different fields. They were coming from different sorts of education too, and then
Yeah.
reapplying their information to a field that they weren't necessarily even trained in, but they found success in it.
Yeah.
And I think I always recommend that to students where, like, yeah, you can follow the curriculum as to what school is giving you, no matter what the program is, but you should also take the reins of control a little bit and say, I'm also really curious about this field or that field, and I want to find out, and can I use that information? I've also
Hmm.
even found, like, today, many students who are actually coming from a different industry completely. Some of them are, like, again, engineers. Some of them are like, I don't know, biologists or whatever, graphic design or whatever field. I mean, that's a creative field too, but a completely contrasting creative field
Right.
that they are able to use that information. And some people feel like it was a waste of time, and some people feel bad because, like, oh man, I spent so much time in that area. I'm trying to go for something brand new, but I always remind them is like, well, that experience and education that you got can be readapted to this stuff as well. Because being a conceptual artist, designer, whatever the case may be, is a person who can adapt and problem solve, through many means of artistic forms and technology, hybrided together.
Yeah.
So if you can introduce something that is not, I guess, a part of the norm of education, that you bring in something to the table that is unique in the way you think, actually makes you potentially a bit more valuable. I was even talking to this with a couple of students the other day about some of them were really interested, like, for instance, coming from a different industry or a different form of education. Some of them might be things like doctors. Some of them might even be engineers, but they're really interested in not fully investing into the world of, let's say, concept art or entertainment design. But they really love the format of creativity and art forms. but could they find that middle in between space where they want to be that middleman that helps bridge the two industries together?
Right.
So, for instance, one of them was like a software engineer, and he's like, "But I really want to be the middle guy that does the software engineering, but I can also communicate with the artists, and I can find ways to even bridge that communication together really well." Or the doctor who is actually going into his medical field, and I just had him as a mentor as a kid, but he's finishing up his like medical education, but then he also really loves art. And he's trying to ask about, well, how can I bridge these two things together? Where I still really love to draw, I like to be creative, but I really want to maybe show communication or storytelling through journals and articles or whatever the case is that uses the medical field and art together. So I think these kinds of things where people are hybriding or using multiple different avenues of education, which makes them highly more valuable because they're now not necessarily specialized, but they bring different qualities that no other
Yeah.
one has. So I think that's also really important that you don't want to just go through the system that everyone else is going through.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, think about it from this perspective. You remember when you look at software, for instance, right?
Yeah.
What's the most frustrating about learning software is the complexity of it.
Oh yeah, the UI and all that.
And usually the best marker of whether the software is successful is the ease of use.
Yes.
Like literally that.
Yeah.
So if you yeah, exactly what you said, like if you can almost bridge yourself between two industries, your perspective is now so valuable.
Exactly.
That by itself, you're almost like creating a space for yourself where no one else is, and there's no competition for you.
Yeah. And it was the case for Concept where learning like 3D or different programs was that bridge in between. But as you said, it plateaued a little bit. So.
No, I agree. Because I mean, looking at even simple things like phones, right? Why Apple is so successful with iPhones?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they are the easiest devices to use.
Exactly.
I mean, I when I give my daughter has an iPad.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, you use it better than me already, and she's only 5. You know what I mean? It's like it's just it's so intuitively well designed. Exactly. And there is a person like that knew enough about engineering and the function, that they knew exactly, okay, how to, you know what, like I understand that field. Maybe I'm not maybe Elon Musk of engineering, let's say, right? I'm not the best at it, but I understand it enough that, but I'm also like, I like art. I like how, beautiful, I like the beauty of it, right?
Exactly.
How do I translate those two fields?
Right.
That's what basically Steve Jobs was,
Oh, absolutely. Huge. So I think as young artists that are trying to find their way, yeah, you can go look for a job in a corporate field or whatever the case is. But I think if you're able to marry and bridge of a demand of something, or even create that demand,
right,
fill that space, you become, again, very valuable within the industry and the field. Whether through a job positioning or through your own personal endeavor, just because you're looking for something like that. For myself, a lot, working with guys like Manu and Aaron and all the people at Expedition Arts, we're very, into nature and wildlife and conservation. So we're trying to bridge art forms and storytelling with art, with animal conservation as much as we can.
Yeah.
So together, when we draw, we'll travel, and we, bring awareness up as much as possible with the limitations of what we can do. But, we're very highly passionate about that side. So definitely, a part of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? Like being that bridge. Yeah. I think that's what this world needs more bridges.
Yes. Oh no, 100%. Yeah. And it could be even the simplest thing, just how to connect from one social, grouping to another one. Two different people that kind of don't have understanding of how to communicate. Can you be that individual? How do you present in a way where people can click and understand each other? Whether through technology or whether through creative storytelling, whether through other means. I think that's the best way to go about this going into the future, because it does support your personal interest, but it also helps the community, but also can be a viable business as well too. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you think is next for you? I mean, you've done the Kickstarter, and you're kind of like in this limbo right now.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a limbo, kind of, but as one thing exit, another thing opens. It's like the idea.
Of course.
Windows open. And for me, a big part of what was supposed to happen for this year was a ton of traveling. So from the last couple of years, I've been traveling internationally a lot. Every summer, I'd be traveling to some country, doing lectures and workshops and expos and conventions. And this year was supposed to be no different. Starting in April, I was supposed to be in a bunch of different places. This month of May, I was supposed to be all out too, but everything is pretty much cancel, as
Right.
I expected, and that's fine. And a lot of these don't really even pay. It wasn't really a monetary gain. It was something because I really enjoyed doing it. I love
Right.
traveling, love
Hmm.
meeting people internationally. It helps me, spread my message and voice of things that I'm doing. So it has a lot of good return. But because that's not going to happen this year, it just kind of goes back to the idea like, well, what do I need to be doing? Well, I'm going to keep teaching because I was going to take the art center term off in the summer. And because I'm doing
Hmm.
so still, I'll teach my own classes continually under my platform. So I'll open up more terms in the summer and see if I can fill those. As I'll wait to see what happens going into the late summer, July, August, and see if there's any other, because there's a couple of events that are not canceled just yet, but I'm kind of waiting for them to cancel it at this point, like Comic Con. And there's a big workshop in Paris I'm supposed to be doing too, with a place called Beaux Arts Entertainment School. But after all that stuff potentially cancels, then going into the fall with the continued teach and all the kind of rescheduling will happen for the next year at this point
Hmm.
too. And the book I'm still planning to release, with Super Ronnie. I'm trying to get it done as soon as I can. We're hoping for like a summer release, which I still would like to. And even if we don't announce it at Comic Con, I can definitely still, sell things through online, through formats, and whatever the case is.
Right.
It doesn't end at this point. And then, of course, if 2021 things kind of settle down a little bit, then of course, hopefully the traveling will be okay, and I would definitely like to do so. And so that's next couple of years. I'm going to try to maintain that because I still have the energy to go out there and just travel intensively. But that's definitely the big interest at the moment. There was supposed to be tons of travel this year too. I was wanting to go back to, like, we went to Africa last year. It's like, I'm sure Manu told you about this.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
then we're supposed to go back this year. I was supposed to even try to go to Mongolia in like October or so. I wanted to go see that location. So I travel a lot because I like experiencing these locations. One for artist inspiration, but also just because of just personal interest. A lot of them is for like workshops, but like these other ones are more personal kind of traveling. But for now, at this moment, this year, it's just nonstop classes at this point.
Mm.
Any contract jobs that come that way, I'll definitely pick up a couple if I can. But it's a pretty clear path as to what I need to be doing for the year. So there's no like second guessing or trying to figure out what to go for. Every single day I'm on something. So yeah,
That's good. And you have your Twitch channel as well?
it's Peter Han Style on Twitch. Is I try to do live streams probably once or twice a week. I was very on point about that in the first couple of months. The last couple of months have been a little bit slower because of the book project and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get back on it.
Priorities.
Yeah, exactly. So to be on like usually Mondays and Thursdays. And then just my Instagram, Peter Han Style, is where I post up a lot of my stuff. So I announce when I go live, or I announce things like when classes are available. That's kind of like my main feed, essentially.
Instagram. Yeah. Instagram is pretty good at it. I was
So far,
letting you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of up and downs with Instagram in terms of like the way it feeds, but so far it hasn't really adversely affected me. So it's been good.
Yeah, it's been pretty solid. I would say Instagram is good. I mean, I'm not. Twitter is okay.
I don't use Twitter.
It's too much politics. I hate
Yeah.
politics.
Exactly.
And
building my
Facebook, I don't know. Facebook is kind of
No, I
dead,
don't
right?
use Facebook either. It's just more
Yeah.
personal connection with family. But YouTube, I do use for content. And that's like separate content where it'd be things like reviews of stuff,
Mhm.
product, hardware, specialized things that I do personally. And then of course, the live feeds where I kind of talk to people, kind of letting them know how I teach. It kind of gives them a taste of it, and it kind of feeds in the direction of like classes I can go to. So
That's great. Yeah. Or this weird times.
it is. And again,
Weird
I
times,
do
but
feel like, as you said, staying positive is a big part of it. And there's a lot of great things that can come from this as artists.
right. Yeah.
We influence, and we in a way that's separate from like social media kind of thing. But I'm talking about in the sense of like, in these kind of rough times, it's hard to maintain motivation and energy, and then also positivity. So art forms, whether through reading, through art of looking at films and graphic novels and doing art yourself, sculpture, anything that you do, is a great way to, like I said, kind of maintain this drive of coming out the other side in a more positive. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I'm like really ramped up the amount of podcasts I do, because normally,
definitely.
this is something I take seriously, but I also, like we talked about before we started, recording, consistency is a key.
Oh, it really
So
is. Absolutely.
I used to do a podcast where I would do like a bunch of episodes and really like put together a nice lineup, do them all, and then like it just got completely obliterated by time and the amount of effort it takes. So like the idea was like, doing it once every other week is sustainable because I can find time to do so.
Yeah.
But now with the coronavirus, even though,
Yeah.
you know, I feel blessed to be able to say like I'm more busy than I've ever been,
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine.
which can end any moment, honestly, because that's the volatility of the industry. You know, I've been lucky with the film project that I'm on that is still going. And it seems like it's gonna go for a little bit. But again, like with film, even if everything's going well, I can
Yeah.
like literally on
Hope it
the
does.
spot, like, oh, we're shutting down.
Right.
So who knows? And then, you know, a couple of other projects that I've been on that's been really good. So I cannot complain.
Right.
Almost like sometimes I wish I wasn't have to do that, so I can do more of other stuff, you know. But yeah, I cannot complain. But you know, this is one of those things where, like you said, you like to give back to the community that gave you so much inspiration, and it's kind of like going back to your childhood where you were encouraged to do things, and that encouragement led you to where you are, and you're pretty happy with where you are.
Oh,
and
100%.
I feel like giving that back to the community matters. And you know, it's just like I've noticed there's so much negativity that's specifically coming from news, which is shameful in my opinion. That, you know, sometimes you just need like a good voice, something like, even though we're pretty candid and we're talking about, you know, the good and bad, that, you know, what we think could happen or is happening, you know, you cannot be like hyper optimistic and fake about it either. You know, you kind of want to be real, but I think that at the end of the day, what matters the most is like, yeah, this is where, you know, even if the sky is falling, then it's still an opportunity at the end of the day where you can take advantage of forceful amount of like you're forced to have time almost at this point. Then why not take advantage of it? Why not learning a new skill? And maybe for whatever happens next, you know, you might be equipped with something that will make you more prepared, you know?
But, you know, going back to like the communication of people, it's like in this kind of social distancing that's happening, in a lot of ways, I don't think you should really isolate yourself either. You should actually connect more to people. Try to find ways to, you know, go online or the Hangout kind of stuff, and find ways to go back to your family, whatever the case is, because that's, again, a huge importance as I think too. So
yeah, I agree 100%. Well, family, like, especially if you live with them, that's probably more tough, being at 24/7. But like friends and whatnot, definitely. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Just having like quickly, maintaining.
Were you guys planning to do anything for Lightbox for this year?
Yeah, well, this year we're planning to have a booth, maybe. Who knows? And I definitely doing the mixer. But now it's all up in the air. Like we don't know what's gonna happen. So
just let me know if you need help with anything. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Bobby sent out emails, you know, kind of updates. We're kind of like all of us are kind of waiting, you know.
Exactly, we're just waiting.
Yeah, we don't like. It's literally, I don't know what the hell's gonna happen. And even when if it's a go and everyone's there, like how is it gonna feel with the social distancing?
Weird. If it does happen, it'll feel very weird, I think.
Yeah, so we're kind of playing it by the ear. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be sitting with the Superani group for this year if they come, but they're traveling from far distances. So again, I don't know if they're going to want to risk that, you know. And even if it does happen,
it's true.
I feel like people would still cancel. There are people, especially people traveling internationally.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, a lot of things are going to be weird this year.
It'll be different. I mean, it started off so strong for last year. There's tons of people, but because of this, I feel like the show, even if it does happen, will have a completely different energy. And the amount of people might be less, if not more so, I think.
But yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll play it by the ear. We'll see what happens.
Cool, man.
I'm curious myself because we had some plans for it, but who knows? Right now, we're just happy that we're not really that much affected. Obviously, you know, it's expected that less people are interested in spending.
Yes.
That's pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
So but it doesn't affect us to a point where we have to like think about, you know, putting people on hold or anything like that. So
sure.
It's almost like business as usual in a way, which makes me really happy. That we're equipped to do that. But yeah, who knows? Dude, we've been chatting for a while now. Time's
We can end it whenever
fly.
you need to. So
Yeah, it's awesome. It was awesome to actually get to meet you a little better. I mean, we spoke to each other on the Lightbox, but
it was brief too.
it was very brief, and it's just that the crowd is very difficult to sort of like, you know, have conversations like that. And for me, podcast is one of those places where I get to know people a little better.
Exactly.
A lot of friendships coming out of this too. So that's
sure.
awesome.
It was great, man. Thanks for reaching out and you know, having this moment. And it's great to be able to get to know each other more for sure. But then, like you said, you know, getting other people out there in the know as to, you know, what people are thinking of while we're still kind of a quarantine, staying by ourselves, and getting the opportunity to share more thoughts. So it's great to just, you know.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I like. I mean, the amount of love that comes from people from this, just like, you know, all around the world. It's like, dude, I'm in quarantine in Italy. And it just like brightens my day. Like when you hear that, it's like, oh, fuck yeah, you know, it's all worth.
It was awesome, dude. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's plug your social media again, where people can find you.
Yeah, mainly anything under Peter Han Style for Instagram, Twitch, even my Facebook page has part of that. But mainly my Instagram is where you'll find all my information. So if you just go to Peter Han Style, you'll find all that stuff there.
Let's do that. Subscribe to Awesome Peter.
My classes will begin, I think, around early May. Registration will happen like actually next week. But a lot of opportunities at the school. So I think for students, the best thing to do is just research, contact people, get advice. And all these different places have all great quality of education wherever you go. So it's just about making sure you make a decision and just try it out. You know?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Perfect. Cool. Anyone who's listening to this, if you've enjoyed the show, you know, want to be always reminded that's the next one's coming up.
Cool. Awesome.
Subscribe, and leave a comment if you have like any ideas or any comments you want to leave. Obviously, any of that helps the show. To me, it's like more of a philanthropy. I do it because I love doing it, and so I mean, I've been saying this forever, so I guess I don't have to repeat myself all the time. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for everything, Peter, and yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, man. Thanks for chatting.
Cool.